Hey guys, welcome back to TBM episode. What is it now, Blaze? It's 4, yeah. Episode 4. Today I have a special guest, Captain Leddy, and we got driver back Conrado that I work with. Awesome individuals. Kind of tell us about you guys.
Go ahead.
Cool. My name is Brad Conrado. Work for Longview Fire. I've been there just shy of 9 years. Love it. It's a great job. Station 1, Top Gun, fly solo.
That's it. Station
Downtown
1,
Aces. That's it.
Cap?
That's it? Okay. Name's Travis Leddy. I work for Longview Fire Department also. 16 years. Driver at Truck 5 for probably 8 of those, and total of 12, I think, at 5. I promoted lieutenant in April, and now I'm captain at Station 6.
Heck yeah.
So
Yeah, he's
learning.
my first captain. My first, actual assigned captain.
Best captain.
Best captain.
It's a fight.
Let's not
I
fight.
love y'all both
It's
equally.
okay. I know that you.
I love y'all both. But so, how long have you been in cap now?
I moved in April up to captain and at 6. So it was you weren't there very long before I left.
No, or how long you been in Longview entirely?
Oh, yeah, all of my firefighting career. So 16 and a half years.
Oh, you've been in that long? Mm-hmm. Oh man,
I know, right? It doesn't feel like it.
It's funny when I came to Longview though, and I met Brad. You had us on our second day or something, whatever. You was hazing us. But no, he wasn't hazing us. But I thought you been there maybe 3 or 4 days. I mean, not 3 or 4 years. I meant, and because you look so young. I thought you was 23.
Me?
Yeah, 24.
Oh, yeah.
Then you
for
told
sure.
us your bio, and I'm like, what the?
No, that's changed. I still act like it.
Must got a little Asian in you or something?
No,
Do you?
man. Coffee when I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
Bunch of
Whatever. All right, guys. So today we're going to be talking about something that's very important to all three of us. We have this conversation a lot, and it's kind of like the passage of manhood and what it means to be a man. I know whenever I was at Station 6, me and Captain Leddy, he was working on a book to kind of give a passage to his kids, and because it's a lost thing that's going on right now, and I think that's essentially what's really wrong with society.
I agree.
I think, we can go back and talk about some, more historical times of the Romans and the Spartans and everything else when they had a rite of passage. But for us today, what is there? I mean, you can start doing TikToks and everything else, but dude, it's just weird. It's weird to what we see today.
Yeah.
So the book specifically, I started when my daughter was conceived. I realized, I have a dangerous job. Things happen in life anyway, and so I wanted to pass something on to them so they would know me. And so I started just kind of writing down your shower thoughts. Not like TikTok shower thoughts, but whenever you've been in a conversation or somebody rubbed you the wrong way, and you just kind of dial down eventually to whatever that thing was, and you're like, or I wish I'd said that. That would have been the right thing at that moment, Started writing those down, and then eventually I started writing them in this little brown book, one of those moleskin books.
Brown book right here. This is his book. It's just
So uncomfortable.
it's just I don't know. Whenever you told me about this, I was extremely impressed because my dad's never didn't do anything like this. My dad's taught me a lot in life. My dad's an awesome dad
For sure.
but not many people think of stuff like this, And if my dad died, it would have been a mystery for me because there wasn't really nothing left behind for him to kind of teach me how to be a man. Yeah. But that's wild. But it's not necessarily just dedicated to men. It's just
not. No, it was. I mean, it's really not even dedicated to growing up. It's more just this is my wisdom. This is who I was and what I believed. Those things that you want to pass on, that your principles and things like that.
Leddy's version of Proverbs in the Bible.
Yeah, all right. That made it even so much worse. Ah, golly.
No, that's it, man.
Don't
What gave
compare
you
it to that.
That's it.
Sacrilegious.
No, that's not sacrilegious. That's legit, right?
Man.
I think that's healthy to write Proverbs down, which is what you've done. I guess I've never put it in that context. That's
It's
super
amazing.
wise.
If you've ever read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, it's in that vein. Now, I didn't want to compare it to that. I definitely didn't want to compare it to the Bible.
It's not sacrilegious.
So what gave you that idea?
Well, it was just at first. It was you'd be mowing the yard, and I'd be like, man, that was what I should have done, or whatever. That was the proper answer.
Yeah.
And I remember having those thoughts of myself in high school, and then like I had that crisis moment, not crisis, but like realization, that I'm really not going to be around forever, and if it happens early, I got a baby on the way, and so I should leave something behind. At the time, I was a little wannabe songwriter, and that was more just to
He's
impress
good,
my
by the
wife.
way.
How old were you?
25.
25. That's a very mature thing to think about when you're 25. Like I'm 25 now, and I say that. I do think about stuff like that. That's how the conversation got started.
You're doing this.
But not many 25-year-olds think about stuff like that.
Yeah, and I guess that's true, but
No way. It's not what I was thinking about when I was 25.
No. But all right, so I want to go ahead and start talking about the first thing that we have coming up, and Captain Leddy kind of wrote a template out for us, and I'll be referencing a lot. So sorry if I'm on my phone, but he made a lot of good points. And let's talk about responsibility of a man. And I guess, well, actually, we're kind of jumping the gun. Like, we've talked about it before, Brad. We talked about it, Captain Leddy, is like that passage to become a man. In y'all's eyes, like, when do you feel like what time in your life did you feel like you was a man?
Yeah, so I've talked enough so far. It's your turn. You can start answering.
No, I like it. This is great, man. I'm learning so much already. Yeah, so I think it was asked of me if it was like a defining moment or if it was kind of just like the emergence of like through a fog, like not really a definitive thing. And I think I would say it wasn't really a defining moment. I think there was a couple, I was thinking about that, and I think there's like a couple defining periods in my life kind of directing me in that way, but I don't think it was one significant thing until I had kids. I really feel it. Yeah. I feel like when I had my first son, Graham, man, just like an introspection of just like the first probably 2 or 3 days just to like let it sink in that like, holy crap, like there's a human being that I'm now responsible for. I think that weight kind of sank in. Yeah. And I think that's where it was like really like up until that point, like manhood, and it sounds kind of weird to say, but manhood was kind of an option, right? Like I could still be a kid and not really put those childish things away. But I felt like once I was like responsible personally for another human being, I think that there was kind of a switch there.
We need to come back to that point right there.
Sweet.
Yeah, awesome.
And it's like, was it like an emotional like pipeline did you go down where you like that kind of like, okay, now maybe I'm a man, or was it just something that I don't know, like it just kind of happened right then and there?
Yeah, like there's a lot to there's a lot to unpack there. I think that like growing up, like we'll talk about dads, I'm sure at some point. But like my dad was a great dad. He's a provider and all those things. And not to like talk shame on him because he did a lot of things right. But I don't think that I had a lot of male figures in my life that were like formative. I can think of a couple, but there wasn't like one particular guy that I just like sank into and was like, I want to emulate that. So I don't know.
Yeah, man, and I've had excellent, manly individuals in my life that I looked up to. My grandpa across the street, the one that's got cancer that we've been dealing with. Like, that's somebody I looked up to so much. Like, I looked at him as a dad. And my dad was an awesome dad. Like, he was just so selfless with his life for us. Because I was a problem child. Like, I was a kid that was, doing drugs, doing, getting bad, like, just being bad. And I got arrested in New Orleans and was in jail. And Dad didn't judge me at all and just came and bailed me out and helped me get my life on straight. And, like, that defining moment, like, I went through that, like, really gave me the perspective, like, I have a good dad.
Yeah.
A really good dad. Like, he didn't, like, maybe he didn't belittle me. He didn't do anything. It was weird.
Sounds like he handled it the way he knew you needed it to be handled.
He did. Like, I didn't know he knew me like that. Because, like, when you're like a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old, like, you're just, you act crazy and you just think crazy. And I thought I was somebody else that he couldn't never even comprehend to what I was. But he still knew me and he knew how to respond to that episode. And it was, I don't know, it impacted my life in a weird way and got me straight.
Sure, yeah. Talking about dads, like that's one of the coolest things. Like I think that we have as human beings to have the opportunity to be a dad, right? It just like there's nothing in this world that my sons could do that's gonna make me not love them or not want to like be that for them. You know, yeah. Which I don't want to go too far into that.
Yeah, I understand.
We got plenty of ground to cover.
Yeah.
But like, so this is a question for both of y'all, and you could kind of maybe start with Cap. Like, as your kids grow up, and I guess we'll kind of stick to more of your boys or your male children. Like, when do you kind of start instilling to him like what it means to be a man, and like what it means to be?
Yeah.
I guess like just like
So that that has to be your focus from the beginning, because they're always watching. Everybody tells you that, but you don't realize that till that 3-year-old says a curse word that that you mumbled under your breath last week,
happen.
right?
That doesn't happen.
I mean, I blame my wife on all of it. But I know I'm just as guilty of that. It happens. But they're so observant, and that's how they develop so quickly. But as you got to know what stage your kids are in. That's the hard part. They say, that whole adage, they don't come with an owner's manual. And my mom always said, well, the owner's manual is the Bible. And it's, well, you're right, touche. But there's a lot of gray in there. That's your framework. And then we got to figure out and tailor all the other little things to the kid and what phase they're in. And I got 4. I got 2 boys and 2 girls. My oldest is the girl. It is my oldest and youngest are girls. So raising her was much different than my boys. And that's kind of part of where this conversation specifically went to, because when she got to that maturing point, it wasn't me that had any advice for her. It was my wife. And then looking forward in time, it's going to be me that has to come up with all the right answers for my 2 sons, and they're going to be next. And women have a natural biological coming of age, right? Yeah. All the questions are going to be asked. They should be. To some degree, they're going to have to figure it out, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm going to talk to my boys, it's hygiene, right? It's function. It's the changes, these things. Well, that is much more apparent in females. Boys, you said you had the choice, right? And that's why we have 30-year-old guys living at home still, because they were never given the framework to make that choice in the opposite direction. 100%. Right? You can have 4 kids and still be a child.
Absolutely.
I'm 32 years old, and like I'm gonna be honest, outside of like the Bible, I don't think there has been like a structure that has been painted clearly for me of what it clearly looks like to be a man and how you walk through that, right? Like,
because you can't go off of society.
No.
No way,
like,
dude.
society is like being a man is a bad thing now.
Well, they're inverting it, right?
Yeah, they're trying to.
Toxic masculinity, the feminization of modern man, and the chemicals that we ingest are driving our testosterone levels down. That's a whole other aspect of this. We're not naturally manly at a younger age. We're never going to be. They did tests on grip strength and things like that over a 50-year period, and we're weak. I'm already on testosterone. I'm only 38 years old.
I refuse.
I got more testosterone.
I refuse. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, well, I had the testosterone of a 80-year-old man, and I had a job to do still.
Well, especially our job. So I know the science of like testosterone pretty well, because like something I've always been involved in. I got on steroids when I was 15, and it kind of led a trail of other things. So, but like as far as like cortisol levels and like the stress of our job, like it literally is like the flesh-eating bacteria for testosterone. It kills it. And have you ever had your testosterone checked?
No.
No?
No, I'm a little hesitant.
Really? So it's horrible, especially like, working at station 1 and definitely working at station 6 when you're not sleeping at all.
Yeah.
It like literally it eats it away.
Yeah. Cortisol.
And you can probably feel it. But it's important.
Whenever that psychologist lady came through a number of years ago, and she did all the TMI stuff, or what is it, the stress stuff, whatever it is. At the end of her whole speech, she said, get your testosterone, your vitamin D, and your thyroid checked. If any of those are off, get that fixed before you come to me. Yeah. And all 3 of mine were jacked up.
Tanya?
Yeah, Trent's thyroid's really jacked up.
Yeah.
Tanya?
Yeah. Tanya Glenn. I didn't know how many names we wanted to just be dropping.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. No,
I don't know how that works, really.
Trent, he's on thyroid medication already.
Yep.
just for lack of sleep. But kind of get a little bit off topic.
Yeah,
but
we
it
are.
was a good conversation.
So, back to that though. You have to tailor it to the child, right? And
yeah.
they mature at different levels. My youngest son is a little engineer. He's hard-headed and highly intelligent. He wants to build things all the time. And so, I tailor my punishment to him. He wants to beat up his little sister all the time, and he wants to beat up his older brother all the time. Because his older brother is smart enough to know that he can't hurt his younger brother, or he's going to really be in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a lot more cerebral, and just they're different, So I have to deal with them and punish them in different ways. The other day, I took Rhett and my younger son, and I was like, look, he was just being a turd all day long. Talking to him wasn't working. Taking things away wasn't working. Spanking him wasn't working. And the day before, we had built a belt. I do leather work, right? I play at leather work.
Leddy leather.
Yeah.
TM.
So I take him out to the shed, and I'm like, you're going to build a spanking strap. And I made him do all the steps. So he pulled the strap, and he cut the strip, and I marked some curves on it, and he did all the hammering, and he beveled the edges. And the whole time, he knew exactly what he was building, right? And he did all the work without complaining. I mean, he was sad. I told him he was getting spanking at the end of it with this thing he's building. And
God, that's some dad right there.
and so he
Shaving the
knew what
letter
he
down.
was doing. And then he did everything except for he refused absolutely to put his name on it. So this is going to be yours. And he said, no, I'm not putting my name on that. Like adamantly refused to do it. Wouldn't touch the hammer. So I put those tools up, and I was like, all right, well, it's done. I'm going to give you a spanking. And he was all sad, and I gave him the half-heartedest spanking I've ever given that kid. But it was terrible for him. He cried so hard. And it was because I walked him, I knew that's what he needed. He needed to walk through that process because that's how his brain works, know. So he went through the entire process of, these are the consequences. You're walking through your punishment right now. And that was an impact for him, I think, because he's been much better the last couple of days. It may only last a week. But I think
How
now,
did you even think of that? I would have never thought of something like that.
you just watch your kid. That's how his brain works. Like my older son, take away his phone and he's crushed. If I make him read, he's even more crushed. Yeah. He hates to read. He doesn't want to do the effort on it, right? And he can do it. He just doesn't want to. He hates it. I told him one day he can't get his phone back until he reads, and he didn't read for a week. He was willing to put it away.
Committed.
Yeah, because he's a little stubborn too.
Brandon,
Anyway, you just got to watch him, and it's hard. You have to be intentional about that. Is really my point. Because if you're not intentional about things that you're showing them and feeding them, it's what you put in, it's what you're going to get out, and you have to give them the right stuff.
I love the fact that if you're not putting stuff into your children's minds, somebody is, right?
Yes.
So,
wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a
I
problem.
never heard of that. That's true though.
Well, it's true of yourself as well.
Oh, 100%.
If
You have to guard your heart, man.
that's literally biblical, right? It changes the way your mind works because you're processing. That's what you dream about, and that's the things that you spit out the next day. I mentioned I wanted to be a songwriter, so I would listen to music and think about music, and I'd write music on my guitar. And when I stopped and I started reading, I would write stuff, and it would come out easy. But I couldn't write songs anymore. I'd changed what my brain was focused on and what it was processing all the time. We have to do that intentionally to our kids. We have to shape them in that way.
I guess that's why, you're doing 75 hard right now in the importance of intentional actions.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, 75 hard.
You ever heard of 75 hard?
Dude, it's awesome.
Explain a little bit about it.
Yeah, 75 hard, 5 things. You have to drink a gallon of water every day, read 10 pages of a motivational book, self-help book. You have to choose a diet tailored to your goals. It's got to be challenging. Can't just be like the freaking seafood diet or ice cream diet or whatever. You got to work out twice a day, 45 minutes. I think it has to be 3 to 4 hours apart. One of them has to be outside. And then you have to take a progress picture, which sounds kind of goofy, but all of it, so I saw 75 hard somewhere, I think through social media. Buddy had just finished it or something, and I was like, man, what is this all about? And I kind of got into it and looked into it, and it's kind of described in a lot of circles as like a fitness program or like a fad diet kind of thing, but it's none of those things.
No.
And what I saw out of it was an opportunity to regain some daily disciplines that I was kind of lacking in, you know, just different things. I wasn't growing spiritually. I wasn't growing in my career. I wasn't growing in a lot of areas, and I was being super complacent. And we know that you're moving one of two directions. You're either growing or you're not. So, yeah, I'm 21 days in, and dude, it's been a game changer. Like, it's not just like this profound experience, but like it's making me intentional about like doing things and seeing it through. And like, I played a youth camp yesterday, and just like having to balance that, like from sun up to sundown, like there was something on the schedule. So like having to be intentional about finding those pockets. And what it does is just shows you that you actually have a lot of free time on your hands.
Yeah,
that,
we waste so much.
We always talk about we're so busy, and like, yeah, like not to take that away from people, but like you're never as busy as what you think you are.
Oh, no. You put your phone down and really realize how not
bro.
busy you are.
By the way,
Yes.
the progress pictures are going to be in the show notes.
Oh, yeah, we got to take one today. I'll take one for you.
Yeah, so the progress picture, it sounds dumb, but again, it's just one of those things where it's like people have failed the program just from not taking a progress picture. And that's the thing about 75 Hard. If at any point in the process, you can be 60 days in, and if you forget to do one of those steps, you start over. So it's just another daily discipline.
That's part of it, though. That's because how many people are going to quit it and be like, no, screw this, I don't want to do that again. And then
I think
they've
I
not
would do it.
completed
I think I would quit it and be like, fuck this shit.
Yeah,
Like,
dude. You're 60 days in. You're 60 days in, dude. Ugh.
Just for the progress pictures. I don't want to do that part. I don't want
Yeah.
to see that.
Yeah, which Andy Frisella, it's a guy who created the program. He says, man, there's nobody to keep you accountable in that program but you, and
Right.
that's intentional.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you want to lie about your progress picture and go, like, whatever, dude, like, but you know that you didn't do it. So,
You're the easiest person to lie to.
oh, yeah.
You're the easiest person to pull the wool over your own head because you can believe any lie that you tell yourself if you because you're the one who's going to have the counter argument. You're the one who's gonna, I'm too busy. I've been sick. I almost died in February. That's why I'm fat. I had to get over that one. Eventually,
yeah.
I mean, not being able to breathe kind of sucked, but eventually that got better because I was working. It's been
You looking good right now.
I've lost
you
a
that
lot
the
of
other
weight
day.
because I was being fat.
Yeah, I was on the drive on the way over here, and I was thinking about, like, what it looks like to be a man visually, and, like, he's the epitome. I was
Yeah,
like,
Patrick Swayze.
Gunner picked me, bro, to talk about manhood.
Well, I'm glad we didn't do this in February.
Oh, yeah.
I think Captain Leddy is the only person that could get shot with a 50 cal and it like actually just bounce off of him. He's just so
Oh,
dense,
for real.
like just dense.
It's intense. It's
Just
his
neat.
eyes. Clark Kent.
Tell
He's
everybody
a mix
else
of
that.
like Clark Kent, Patrick Swayze right now. I was on a call the other day and I called him Patrick Swayze and everyone started busting out laughing.
Every time I see Starla, I'm like, hey, do you just consider yourself blessed to have a man like Leddy? She rolls her eyes and tells me an idiot.
I don't.
That sounds about right.
I asked her the other day. I don't think she's liking your facial hair right now.
Oh, she hates it.
Yeah,
she
she was
hates
upset about it the other day.
No,
must-
she actually is upset about it. Like every time she sees me,
Really?
she won't kiss me.
Oh no.
Yeah, what happened? We was talking about you. I was like, Captain Leddy's looking good. He goes, oh, he's being a turd right now. I can't remember what she said.
Well, it's because
But-
of my hair.
Because your hair.
She wants me to
Yeah.
grow the hair out, and so finally
dude, it
I
looks so
am,
good.
which I've never had hair. I got my first haircut in like 20 years. Since high school that I paid for. I got plenty of haircuts in the Army, but that wasn't something I really paid for. But I just didn't cut it for too long, and then she's like, you have to grow it out. And I hate it, and so I like it when she runs her hands through it, so I let her
Hey.
coerce it.
Yeah.
But then I was like, well, you know what? I'm going to grow my mustache. And whenever she's tired enough of this one, and she lets me cut this one,
Yeah.
then I will. She hasn't called my bluff
I
yet.
think it looked weird without the other. Like you have to, if you're gonna do one, you gotta do both.
Yeah, right.
Full sin.
But so how do you discipline your kids? Because they're a little bit younger
Yes.
than Cap's kids.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm learning from the man right now, but I think one thing I've learned, so I've got two boys, Cohen, who's 2, and Graham, who's fixing to be 5 in a couple weeks, which is freaking nuts. Yeah, like I've noticed that I tried to take the same approach with Cohen, my youngest, and it's just not the same. Like I think that's very true. Like we talk about like equal and fair, and like at the end of the day, like you got to meet them where they're at. And like Graham is very much, I don't think violent is the appropriate word. Spankings work with him, right? Like if I threaten with like a spanking or I get physical, I don't raise my voice. That's one thing my dad did with us, and I refuse. I don't yell at my kids. I'm just very direct. And And with Graham, I can be direct and, do you want a spanking, right? And I don't jump straight to that. I try to do other things, but he knows it's coming, and it works. With Cohen, I'll look at him and the dude will melt.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, he'll be doing something. I'll just look at him and be like, that's what we're doing right now? And he's just like, just gets super taken back. And so I had to adjust because I felt like I would, with Graham, like throttle up really quick to meet him where he was. And with Cohen, it would just like destroy him.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I believe in spankings. Spare the rod, spoil the child. I don't abuse my kids, and it's not like the first thing that I pull out, but
there's a time for it though.
yes. And
when they're little, especially, I think when you gotta surprise them with that spanking when they're reaching for the stove.
Yep.
You gotta put your spankings in the place of that thing that later they could do to hurt themselves.
They got to see that there's a consequence. I think one thing that was helpful for me to kind of walk through that was like, I'd threaten with a spanking, and like, let's say Graham's doing something that he's not supposed to be doing. Like, if you continue with this, you're going to get a spanking, right? And so, again, just being direct, and if he did it, then I would pull him aside. I don't act in anger, right? That's our natural tendency. Like, hey, he does it, and you want to blow up, right? Like, but what I found is I'll either remove myself from the situation if it's frustrating me that much, or I'll just kind of bring my heart rate down and kind of calmly just like, okay, and then bring him to another space. I found that to be effective. Not in the moment, and sometimes in the moment is appropriate, right? Reaching for the stove, don't do that.
Yeah. Totally meant specifically with that.
Yes, but like and especially the older that he's getting, like he's more cognitive, like he understands, and so I'll remove him from the situation. I'll explain why he's in trouble. I'll give him the spanking, and then I'll be very intentional to kind of let him come down from the upset, the cry, and just let him know that, hey, I love you, and this is why I did this.
Yeah. I make them tell me, why did you get a spanking?
That's good.
And why did I give it to you?
Because they have to know, right? Because if you just smack them, then they just see cause and effect. But if they understand the why, then there's growth.
Yeah. I tell them to go to my room, and then that's
that's the cue.
It was impressive to me, kind of, because I don't have any kids, but like, y'all put like a lot of thought into this.
You have to.
A lot.
Yes.
And I observe from other fathers and stuff, they don't think of this. They don't.
Oh,
well, maybe they can't articulate it, and
sure.
It's probably not that they just haven't thought about it at all, because surely you have some kind of style that you hope most people do anyway. That doesn't mean most people can verbalize it.
Yeah, it's true. But I don't know. It's very impressive. But so, like, what's the next thing? All right, so let's talk about this passage of becoming a man. Yeah. So, like, we talked about, you said you started it kind of from the start. But, like, females have, like, a physical thing that happens to them in their life that kind of designates them from, like, girl to now woman. And when we mean woman, that she can now bear a child and do woman things. For men, there's really not that. There's puberty, but I don't know. With puberty, there's nothing but the only thing that comes with puberty is
it's confusing changes and not a whole lot of consequences for anything.
I'll let you know when that happens for me.
Yeah,
not
I
immediate.
haven't had puberty yet.
I don't think I have either. Because I'm still only like 5'6", 5'7", and it's embarrassing.
Midget Mafia,
yeah,
bro.
Midget Mafia right here, bro.
Let's go.
But like, I don't know, like
I'm so tall. I'm my 5'8".
You're a giant.
You are the tallest one. No, Blaison's taller than you. But like, I don't know, like, because females, then they have to take responsibility, and I will agree, like, women tend to mature faster than boys do.
Oh, that's biological. They
Yeah.
definitely do.
And so, like, they start taking on responsibility of making sure, like, they're got the perfect hygiene and stuff like that. But, like, I don't know, like,
there's also social pressure in place for them to
it's true, yeah,
do makeup and dress well, and that's attractive. And some of that's biological too, but they have a social pressure that we don't. My boys can wear shorts and bummy shirts to school, and if they're handsome and pretty or whatever and good at sports, girls are gonna like them anyway.
Yeah, don't look at pictures of me when I was in elementary school and like, golly, bro.
But it's just like there's nothing for a young man or kid to boy.
Some cultures
Boy
have
to
it
man.
though, right? Some
Cultures do.
Jewish tradition has what's it called? It's like the Sweet 16 kind of stuff. We even have that for our girls. We don't have that for our boys.
But it's religious based. It's
a
religious, I guess, pipeline. I use pipeline a lot because I'm military, but like series of events that designates them that. But as far as Christians, I mean, we don't have anything in our cultural history really that was passed down to us. And there might have been like back when Jesus was doing this thing, but like now, I guess it's faded away or died.
Native cultures do, right? The
True.
Native Americans, you know,
Yeah.
they, at least what little I know about it, they had their spirit walks or whatever, and they became a man. They came back from it. They'd kill something, whatever, you know, whatever the various different traditions there are. That's something I think that it's because men are much more spatially aware. We see the patterns in a different way, and we need that that symbolism in our lives. We
Oh,
see the
very much
patterns
so.
of the men around us. We see how that affects our life, and that's, I think, I don't want to get too much into political stuff, but the breaking of the nuclear family, with these boys being raised with only women as role models. Not to say they're not doing a great job 50% of the time with our kids right now. I mean, population-wise, half of them are being raised by women, right? But there's still something missing. They don't have that masculine role model unless it's supplied from a different place. And on top of that, we don't have the ritual to go through, even if you are raised with a great family. I was very masculine, strong father. He, in contrast to the people at my church, I mean, he was like the only person that I respected in an aggressive, manly kind of way. There was good, great Christian men there, but
Yeah.
when I left, I would look around at, like, when I was a senior in high school and be like, these guys are all so weak, you know? My dad and I could break every man in this church right now. And that was disappointing to me because I wanted something different. I didn't have that. This is getting off into another topic, but it's related.
No, hit it.
There's not a way to I never had that that darkness reconciled as a young man because there wasn't the ritual of exploring what it is to have that strong masculine side, and that leads to the toxic masculinity because it's unregulated, it's unfocused. You don't give it a focus from a young age. You don't teach young men. This is what Jordan Peterson talks about all the time, right? That's how I viewed it, and that's how I saw it in myself. And I remember being very down on myself. I'd go to church, and you know, if you're a Christian, you don't have bad evil thoughts, and you know, I felt aggressive. That's why I went to the Army because I know I have that darkness and capability in me.
Oh,
It's
I
just
do.
right under the surface, right? But I shouldn't. But I knew it was there. I knew I had a great capability for it, and that held me back for maturing purposes. I think a lot. I went to the military, and I did that as long as I could, and came back, and my life changed completely. But at that point, I had been through a pretty rigorous rite of passage, right? And so I had focused and learned who I was as a person. But had I been able to do that at 13 or 15, had someone put structure around me, say, look, this is what it is to be a man. This is why you feel these aggressive tendencies, and you know that you have a great capability for these things. By someone who knew me and saw that in me, then that would have been far different, I think, as far as our mental health and ability to be good in society.
Yeah, to add on to that is like I think there's another factor that plays into this, and it's ego. And what I mean by ego is like from personal experience, like everything I've done in my life, I had to be validated. Like,
Yes.
like I didn't feel like I was a real Marine until I went to Afghanistan. I didn't feel like I was a real fireman until I was a nozzleman and I actually had to put out the fire. And that took a while. That took a year of my career. Like it didn't happen the other day.
I know,
You
dude.
know, like, and it's just like, I don't know. It's an ego thing for me. I shouldn't feel that way, but I think as a man, we have to be validated by our actions. And like to me, I just felt outcasted. And I think growing up, you know, us not having that validation of you are now a man kind of leaves us in this gray world and this different dimension of like, am I a man or am I not? You know, and it kind of ties into what you say, and it's true.
So I've always wanted to build that, and I've been so busy with life that I haven't been intentional about creating a program of some kind, right? I've been intentional with raising my boys, and I focus on my sons because, like I said, my wife has got this side of things and the girls handled. Not that I'm not invested in them as well.
Sure.
But the topic is manhood right now. So, but now my 10-year-old is getting to the point I'm finally seeing a change in him. The other day, he had been doing something, and he was really getting under my nerves. And finally, I pulled him aside, and I was getting on him, and I had raised my voice a little bit.
Hey, sometimes it's
that's one of my
necessary.
things. I'm not good at when I get to that anger level. You know, I'm gonna tell him all the things, and I can find lots of things to say. You guys know that, right? And so I was telling him all the stuff, talking to him like a grown man, and I realized that he wasn't arguing with me. He wasn't making excuses. He wasn't doing anything. He was looking me in the eye and saying, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's
Yes, sir."
badass.
Right? And that's new. That's what usually escalates things between he and I. And I've gone higher just at waiting for that to be the thing, right? And so I actually stopped mid-sentence almost. I was like, all right, look, we're coming back to this, but I want to tell you, you're doing much better right now. Like in a calm voice, totally separate. And just had to calm myself down to process it. So like, dude, I can see that you've made a change. You're actually finally listening to what I'm saying.
I wish you would have dug into that and asked him.
Yeah, for sure.
Why?
Well, just because he's finally listening. Because this is the other side of every conversation we have. I need you to stop making excuses, own your responsibilities. You know you did this wrong. Don't lie to me and say you didn't do it or it's his fault or whatever. Just
You
own
think
it,
that
right?
conversation impacted that action, or do you think he just like?
I attributed it to it in that moment, right? I told him that. I was like, I'm not going to give you 2 spankings like I told you. I'm only going to give you 1 because I see some maturity in you. You have to continue this right here. Do you see the positive benefit of this? When you act your age, when you don't act like a 3-year-old, when you talk to me like a little man, I can give you respect. I'm only going to give you 1 spanking. You understand? And he said yes. And I went back to
Because we see the downside.
this is why you can't hit your brother.
Wind it back up.
Well, we see the downside of that now, like, because no one is ever accountable for their own actions. No one never is. Like, it's always an excuse. They always come up with something and stuff like that.
Grown men.
And it's just like the military instills it in you. The Marine Corps definitely does. But I still dealt with boots that still came up with excuses and shit. And I'd lose my fucking mind. Because it's so simple. You just man up to it, take accountability, and say, I fucked up, and you move on.
Yeah.
But they can't. Their ego is so big, or they just don't understand it. It doesn't process in their brain. They should do that. And they just keep on fighting it. And it just leads to worse.
Well, it's humility, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people aren't humble, right?
Dude, I mess up all the time. I need to start actually apologizing prior to go on shift to Captain Nicholson for the stuff that's coming on. For the future.
What's Jocko's saying? Extreme ownership. Is that it, right?
Yeah.
I remember whenever I came out of West Point and I started listening, Jocko came on the scene and I started listening to his stuff. It would remind me of all that stuff that we learned. There was no term for it though, right? It was just an NCO screaming in your face and explaining why you're wrong. You need to take ownership of what you just did. And you're like, it's not my fault. I don't care. The consequences are still yours. You were in charge of them. They screwed it up. That's you, right? And so that higher level of responsibility was part of what's built into it. He put words to it, made it to where everyone else can understand it without having to go through that. And
Jocko's an impressive guy.
oh yes, yeah.
But Brad, I want to kind of transition into like that program I was talking about. Like that. Tell us that podcast that you listened to and your kind of idea that you talked about as far as like that passage of manhood.
Yeah. So, the podcast you're probably referencing, leadership podcast I follow pretty religiously. Craig Rochelle's leadership podcast. There's a lot of good leadership podcasts out there.
I've been listening to him ever since you sent that to me.
Oh man, it's so good.
We need to make that a department. Get some people who want to do that study together every month.
Yes, people listening to this, go look up Craig Rochelle's leadership podcast. Craig Rochelle's leadership podcast. It's awesome. 20 minutes to 30 minutes, boiled down leadership information. I've grown exponentially in the last 2 to 3 years just digesting that information. It's incredible. But I think so the other day I was talking to my captain and his boy is either 13 or turning 13 and we were just kind of talking about stuff like this, right? Just like the passage of manhood, what that looks like, how he wants to formally do that. And it brought to mind something I'd listened to on maybe a year or two ago. Matt Chandler is his name, and he was being interviewed on the Family Discipleship podcast.
Matt Chandler,
Matt Chandler. No, he's not Yusuf. He's a pastor.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a pastor somewhere in the Metroplex. I think it's the Village Church, maybe. Anyways, he was asked, because it's this thing that he talks about in one of his books that he wrote, about the passage of manhood and how he does that with his boys and his girls. It's a really cool concept and something that I'm going to try and put into play into my own life. But he said when his kids, so for example, his son, right? When his sons turn 13, they do a birthday party, right? All his friends come to the house, whatever. They do the birthday party, play games, eat pizza, whatever it is, right? And then that night, all the kids will go home, and then he'll have some parents over to the house. And it's not just parents of the kids that are there. It's parents in his, what he calls his tribe, right? His close community, right? And we all know who that is for us. It could be
Like
2 or 3
grandfathers
people.
and stuff like that.
Yeah,
All
it could
those-
be,
okay.
yeah, just people
People
that
that are important to the kid.
yes, people
Okay,
that are
cool.
important to the kid are going to be formative in his life, right? And for some people, that could be 2 people. For some people, it could be 10 people if you're
Be a
blessed to have that,
scoutmaster
right?
and a principal or something, and your grandfather.
Sure, yeah. People that are going to be there, be around, make an impact on his growth. And he said they'll all sit down in a room, just the men, right? Just the men, him and his son, and they will take turns going around the room and affirming him at 13 years of age. And not like, man, you're a great baseball player, you're great, whatever. Like it's not superficial, right? They want to go deep, right? And call things out of them, right? Like I see you have a passion for leadership, right? I can sense that in you, right? And things like that, right? They'll call that out of him and basically just affirm who he is within that. And then they'll all go around the room and say their piece. And then he as the father, will kind of bring it in and he'll tell his son, listen, you're 13 years old. And this is the gateway into manhood. I want to be very direct and clear. You are not a man, but God has placed things inside of you biologically that are, you're going to start feeling this pull in 2 directions. And one is to be a man, and one is to still be a child. And you're kind of in this gray area. You're not quite a man, and you're not still a child. So at 13 years of age, you're going to have these desires to be independent, to do all these things, but it's going to be unchanneled, or what did you say?
Unfocused.
Yeah, not quite focused, right? You've got all this energy, all these things that are wanting to pull you to be independent, to be the man, right, that you feel biologically.
Are those like you? I mean, we're talking a little bit about religion. You think those are like temptations? You think those are like more like sinful desires, or
Sure, I think all that's birthed out of who.
Could be both, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think all
okay.
that unchanneled energy, right? Like you have all these desires, right? And you're starting to come into manhood, right? But still wanting to act like a child in a lot of ways because
Yeah.
you're in this gray period, right? Not quite a man, not still a child. And he'll basically just be very focused on this is a thing, and all the men in this room are here to help mentor and shape you into that man. So if you have questions, if you have things you're struggling with, right? It could be whatever, right? Girls, parties, drugs, whatever it is, right? If you don't feel comfortable coming to me as your dad, which you should, right? You should come to one of these men, right? Because we're all here to get you to that point, right? To be a guiding force, direction in that. And then he'll close the night and he'll tell all those guys that were in that meeting to just write on a sticky note or a letter, put in an envelope of just affirmations of him as a kid. Like, this is what I think you will be. This is what I think you are. And he said just at points in his life from 13 to when he's out of the house, whatever age that is, when he starts coming into difficult seasons, whatever, he'll just give him one of those envelopes, right? And he'll let him read that. And just listening to him to talk through the podcast is pretty cool. And I thought that's just a really good idea,
crazy.
right? Because like even on this podcast, we're talking, what does it look like to have that switch? Is it a light switch that just comes on? And I don't necessarily think it is. I think it's a pathway, right? And it has to be, like you said, it has to be structured. It has to be channeled. And I think this is a cool way, or at least I thought it was a cool way.
Was this the same guy who does the he took his son out to the cabin, or I guess his grandfather and father took him to the cabin, and they had the big like weekend long ceremony? And
It could have been. It
wrote
could
a
have been.
book.
Matt Chandler, pastor,
remember his
Village
name.
Church. I don't know.
I was trying to look it up because
I think it was because you talked about that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
no.
he has a much more involved ceremony, and some with his, I guess, direct sons, or the one he did growing up, the one he has described in his book anyway.
I think it's important though that like
tailoring it to the child is
yes,
probably what that kid needed.
absolutely. But I think it's important too that at that age they understand, and like not that we're trying to take anything away from them, but understand that like you're stepping into manhood and you're not a man.
Yeah.
You're not ready to go at 13 years of age, have 2 children, raise a family, have bills, have a mortgage, have responsibilities, have a career. You're not ready for that, but we want to get you ready for that, right? Because I think a lot of guys like they're coming up, and I know for me in a lot of ways it was kind of just like there's a lot of expectation thrown on you and you don't really know what to do with it. You're just like, okay, like am I supposed to be financially independent at 14 years old? Like am I supposed to do all this? And nobody's giving you those answers, right? You just got to kind of
roll with your personality. Whatever your personality is going to do is kind of what you do because there's no focus in it.
But there are pathways to that. I don't think it's the same guy, because when I remember listening to him, he was like, at 13 years old, we said, you're passing through a gateway, and now you are a man. And that was like his point, saying, you are a man now. Mm-hmm. And I remember when he said that, I was more like what you're talking about. I was like, he's passing through a gateway, but he's at the trailhead.
Yes.
We just came off the parking lot and we walked to the trailhead, and now he has a path to follow. Mm-hmm. That's what we've given him, not you've arrived.
I think it's talking biblical, I think it's in Corinthians, Paul says, when I was a child, I did childish things, and when I became a man, I put away childish things, right? And that's a process. That doesn't just happen.
No,
right?
I agree.
Yeah, and so I think people have to understand that it is a process, and it's not just like, okay, you're a man now, start doing man stuff, right? There's this being a child, coming into manhood, the pulling of 2, and then now you're a man. Yeah. Act like a man, put away childish things.
What I want is to build. They know, just like you said, this is the moment. Now I have to start putting away those childish things. I have to maybe think about, and I think 13's maybe too young for some kids.
I think
they
so
might
too.
need to be a little older, but
Yeah.
that depends
especially
on
in today's generation, depending on how you're brought up.
Yeah.
But
What do you
then
think
it's
the
also
proper age is?
13 or 15. You know,
I say
somewhere in there.
I say I don't know. Testosterone's so
Well,
heavy.
Maybe or maybe not. You know, I think it's part of it's the mentality of the kid. You're gonna have a kid that's a late bloomer who's still childish. I see that in my son's friends. They're like the same age, and they all have a birthday party and they're hanging out, and there'll be one that just doesn't involve himself with
there's
them.
dudes that are like 15 that are way more mature than I was when I was in my early 20s.
absolutely.
And that kid's gonna need it early.
Yes,
But we go back to, it's all how they're raised, because I haven't met your kids, so I can't speak on them, but I have met your kids, and they are very respectable kids. Like your daughter and your kids all gave handshakes when we met them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty impressive coming from like an 8-year-old in that area.
Yeah, because if they don't, they're going to have to build a leather strap that they get whooped with.
Don't get hung up on
True. And he's a scary man, so like it'd be rough. But like, I don't know, you just don't see that, especially now. Especially now. Like my dad always instilled to say, yes, sir. My grandpa the same. Yes, sir, no, sir, and stuff like that. We always respected men and anybody that older than us. But I see kids now, like I have a cousin, like the other day he was having Thanksgiving, and he's got some weird stuff going on. But he was just like, I said, good morning or something. I said, hey guys, what's up? He just walked right past me. Didn't even acknowledge my presence.
Well, I mean, kids our age were raised by a whole generation of Dr. Spock. You know, let the kid decide his own path in life.
Yes.
And, no consequences.
You can do whatever you want to do.
Raising their kids in that way, or something in the middle, and so.
But this kid's jacked up, and let me tell you, so he doesn't have a mom. He doesn't have a dad. He's being raised by his grandpa. I mean, his grandma, and that shows you the impact that y'all have on y'all's children, and the focus of that energy that y'all talk about is important. And I don't want to get into too much details. We can talk about it a little bit after, like what all he's experiencing. But it all validates everything that we're saying now.
Well, you put a scar tissue on him on top of that, and then that's just...
Yeah, exactly. But, let's, we'll kind of move on. That's some good points.
What are we on bullet point number 2?
What's up?
Yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah.
Probably like 2 hours
I'm trying to
already.
find it. All right, so now let's get on to, like, what does a man do?
What does a
Because
man
we
do?
kind of talked about the process and stuff like that. Now, like, what is it to be a man? In some things you have on here is dedication to the purpose, intentional decision making, and consistency. And take time to know yourself and figure out how to articulate that to others, and sacrifice and selfless sacrifice. And I like that, because as a man, like even with my wife and everything else that the job that we do, like I believe being a man is definitely a sacrificial thing that we have to embrace. Everything we do, we sacrifice what we want, what we need, and everything to ensure that our wife or our kids have the life that they need to have. And I really like that bullet point.
Well, I mean, I think that is all the way back to the definition of love.
Yeah, true.
When we first marry our wives, we're in lust, and then
Yeah.
we develop
Oh,
the
yeah.
actual long-term love, you know.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't know how women feel.
That's
I
true.
think it's maybe a little bit
I think it's about on par.
probably the same.
They'll lie to you and say, "No, I just loved how you were." No.
I can't imagine falling in love with this long hair of mine.
Yes.
But
Marriage.
No, that's a true statement.
But everything we do is, and part of it's culture, and part of it's just what I see a biblical. I'm gonna mix two terms: a biblical yin yang of our relationship, the way we fit together.
Sacrilegious.
Yeah, maybe. But one of them is about Jesus, and one of them is a philosophy. Okay, so they go together.
That's not that bad.
Yeah. Anyway, whatever. You know what I mean, though, right?
Yes.
We're supposed to complement each other to make a whole, and part of that is we sacrifice, we fight, we work.
Yes.
You know, and we're built different, physically built differently, and there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with that statement, especially right now. But
Not that it's a
I see
marriage
truth as it
podcast,
is.
but marriage is two imperfect people sacrificing.
Oh yeah.
and complimenting each other, hopefully in their flaws.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I feel bad for my wife, bro. I'm so fucked in the head. It's not even funny.
She's clearly a very patient woman,
Yeah, she's married.
Yes. Well, it takes a patient
and she
woman
loves
to be
you.
anyone.
You can see.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I love her. But that's a crazy statement that you did say because it is true. It's it's lust first. You find her attractive, and you want to talk to her, and then the love develops, I guess. And if that love never develops, I guess that's possibly a time to kind of maybe move on, break up.
Well, I think that's why that happens, right? You get to the 7-year itch. Well, a lot of things have changed in that time. You've had kids, maybe you've gained 30 pounds, or living situation's hard, or maybe things are great and you're just bored. And so then that's where you have to be like, oh, I've made a commitment. It was actually a promise to God and her.
Yeah.
The triangle in the relationship.
Yep.
You have to. That's the biggest part of. Yes, what it is to be a man. I think your integrity, in all of its various expressions, is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
It's the one thing that can never be taken forcibly from you. You can
agree.
cut my hands off.
100%.
You can embarrass me and destroy my reputation. Job, right? It was his faith that kept him through. That was his integrity to God.
Yep.
And I'll never want to go through what he did, but
No.
you can only give it away voluntarily. You would have to sacrifice it by choice for something else, and that better be one hell of a sacrifice.
Absolutely. And I reference Job a lot until what, dealing with my grandpa and stuff, because I think about that story and whatnot, because that's really the only story that gives me kind of a strength, I would say, to know that someone's went through far worse than I have. And other people's testimonies too, because they've been through worse. But that story always helps me. But another bullet point that I like was consistency, because consistency matters too.
Dude.
And that's something I think I fell in. Like, 'cause sometimes my behavior is not consistent. Like I wish like every day I was in a good mood. I wish every day that I wasn't troubled by something, but I'm not. My wife wakes up and she never knows she's gonna get. It's not that I'm violent or anything else. It's just like, sometimes I wake up and I'm just not in a good mood. I'm depressed and stuff, and I want to lay in bed and not do anything. But I wish that I could be more consistent with my behavior in order to help her, because I know that's probably something that it's rough on her, and that's the way I look at it. Y'all might see consistency in different aspects.
Well, in leadership roles, right? But
Yeah.
it's still the same. You're still in your home and leading your family, it's just you right now. But when I go home, it's still the same dynamic. I'm still supposed to be me in a leadership role. That's how I see, and that's how our relationship dynamic is. She says that she's the neck and I'm the head, right? She's going to direct where we look, and then I make things happen. And that's our balance. And it's the same at work.
I like that.
I have to be consistent as a leadership trait, or else you can't trust me as a leader.
Yeah.
I think like for me, like because this is something like we all struggle with, right? And so like when you try to deconstruct it, like how do I build consistency into my life? And I think for me personally, it comes down to, I think a lot of us like fall into like from time to time identity crisis, right? Like what defines us? Who are we? Like what am I supposed to be doing in this moment? And I think when you can come down to, even when you're having good days, bad days, like how do we, stay driven and disciplined instead of being just motivated? And I think it comes down to who am I? Right? And if you haven't clearly defined that for yourself, I don't think you're going to have consistency. Like you have to know, like for me, I know who I am, right? I know where my identity is and where my hope is, and I know who I am. And so I can always come back to that. So if I'm having a bad day, like, okay, this is who I am, right? This is what I am agreed to do. And I think that's integrity too. Like this is what I've said is,
and to yourself. It's integrity to
yes,
yourself.
like this is what I said is non-negotiable for me. Like even though like the flesh is weak and like I'm a piece of crap and I want to do this or I want to do that, like when I can come back to like, okay, is this the right thing or wrong thing? Like who do I say I am, right? And once I've clearly defined that, what kind of decision would that man make, right? In this moment, would he do this? Would he not do that, right? And I think that's what helps me stay consistent, right? That we all fall short.
Yeah.
Well, you have to know what your path is going to be and how you can't just throw yourself in a situation without training for it, right? And
Yeah.
Sure.
that's part of what that book was for me. After a while, it was just me expressing that and refining it for myself. I would write it and delete it and write it and delete it, before I wrote it in the actual book. And I remember the man that we work with asking me one day, he's like, "Why are you writing this? This is dumb." I was like, it's for me. And he's like, "You can just say, just be a good person. You don't have to do all this."
That's an opinion.
He has a very chaotic life.
What
and he's
define what a good
failing
person is?
in a few ways, and I think that's due to some of this. He doesn't focus on anything, take things seriously like I do. And so
Yeah, like when you have a goal, you have to. I think that's what people don't do. Like when you set a goal, you have to clearly define the goal, and then you have to like people don't sweat the details. The systems and processes is where you win.
yeah.
Right.
And whenever you're tempted, you have to know how to you have to have already rationalized to yourself the arguments against doing the thing that you want to do.
Yes.
You have to know why and be able to express that, maybe not to yourself, but as a teenager to your friends. Look, this is why I don't want to do this. Premarital sex, because I don't want, it's immoral, and also I don't want to make babies at 15.
Sure.
And whichever one of those resonates with your friends, I don't love her, and I don't want that commitment level. Whatever it is, you have to have already figured out those things. I don't want to vent windows on a house fire, all of them. Well, why? Because this guy over here who's old school is telling you to do it. That's a bad idea. And this is why we don't need to do that anymore.
Right.
Right. But if you've never thought through that and you just rely on being able to wing it as you go through life, then you're going to fall into pits that you could have easily stepped over.
That identity thing is something I've thought about a lot since our conversation.
Read Atomic Habits by James Clear.
That's in my list.
So good, bro.
It's weird, and I'm trying to and I probably need to dig deeper in my faith and start reading the Bible a whole lot more.
Yes, and yes,
And
We all
just because it's like I want to be able to identify myself as a Christian and let that be the end all be all. But then I still I tell myself if I lose this, I lose that, and I lose this, I'm gonna be crushed. I'm gonna be crushed.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
And this is like. It's
Is this like things that you would need to cut out of your life, or
say if I wasn't a fireman no more, I'd be crushed. If I went to federal prison,
okay?
and
You
I
mean
lose
consequences
everything, consequences of actions or whatever. Like if these things were taken away or my life was taken away, I would be crushed. But what Brad was saying is but if you identify yourself as a Christian and no one can take that away from you. So what can you be upset about if it has not been taken away from you? You probably articulate it a whole lot better than I can.
I don't know.
I could be a great criminal. I know it.
Sure. I know, but this thing say
I just choose not to.
Say if something happened to you tomorrow and you're no longer able to be a fire captain no more. You're crippled, you're paralyzed.
I've had something similar happen. Not that to that extreme.
Yeah, not extreme, but you lose your identity and it sends you in depression. It makes you not happy. It just messes with your life mentally a lot.
Yeah.
But but what Brad, Conrado was saying is like, if you identify yourself as a Christian, like nothing else should matter. And it's true. It's true. I'm too weak to be able to implement that.
No, you're not.
Can I tell you a slightly personal story? And
Yeah, tell it. I love personal stories.
Well, going back to my church and whatever, young man, I got very bitter about all of Christianity. Go to church camp.
Religion sucks.
Yeah,
It's true.
no, I would go to church camp, and my parents, I know, were doing what they thought was best for me. Go hang out with your friends and learn about Jesus, build those relationships, right? But they're hypocrites.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really go to school with them, and so I didn't know them very well. And so all I knew was church them, and then we spent a week and a half or whatever together, and I saw them going off in the woods with their girlfriends, and there's 3 of us at one point. I thought we were best buddies, and they're like, "Hey, there's 2 girls over there. You got to leave." And I was like, "Okay." Just because I don't go to school with you, I'm third man out, right? And so they were there for the wrong reasons.
Sure.
But then we would go and have these emotional praise and worship sessions, right? And I got caught up in that. And I came home and it came down, and I was like, this is all fake.
It's
Every
a high.
bit of it. Yeah. It's manufactured high. And then I took it further. I was like, this entire thing is a manufactured high. It's just all brainwashing. Right? I was very negative. So then I go to the military. I go to West Point. And right before I leave, right about this time, I'm at a huge crisis, rejecting everything. I have a traumatic brain injury. I dropped some weight on the back of my head in the weight room. Not doing the thing I knew I should have done, which was tell the coach this is not safe, and refusing, right? And that's one of the seminal moments of you have to stand up for yourself, by the way. You have to learn lessons hard. Anyway, so I go up there. I struggle. Eventually go home because I continue to get concussions. All of my hopes and dreams, everything I had sacrificed for that whole time, all those years of high school, I wanted to do it since I was like 14. That's the only thing I worked for. I started writing letters when I was like a freshman in high school. And it was so that I had to quit. I had to voluntarily quit I had to, cut my losses when I finally got to that point. And it was a hard 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then I came back and I had nothing. All my friends, I was the only military guy with my friends at school. And I came back and they all had not made plans or whatever. They didn't pan out at college, and suddenly they'd all enlisted and they were gone. And here I was back with none of the career, none of the stuff I'd planned for. I can't do math because I've been hitting the head too many times, and so I had to really start over. And through that process, I got back into loving God. I worked my way back into that, and so it's a funny confluence of events, right? I pulled away, and my life went to crap, and I finally started showing some faith and working toward that goal of closing that relationship. And suddenly I was making good decisions, and my life was back on the right track.
You were able to redefine who you were as a person.
Well, I was making decisions that were guided. It wasn't just, and that was the other aspect of it, and that's where we started with this, but that's kind of a powerful story for me. I like to share it at certain times.
No, that's good.
But then I had to figure out, now what am I going to do? And so I was going to go, be a mercenary for money. And that's a hollow goal. But I needed to go to work for a fire department for a few years. I still wanted to fight things, right? I hadn't got through that initial thing that we were talking about earlier. I hadn't reconciled that darkness. I just knew I needed to go and fight things. And so I get this job as a fireman, and it's awesome. Yeah. And suddenly I meet a beautiful woman, right? So my life is coming back together, and I'm getting smarter, and I'm healing. And suddenly I realize I have a passion for this job. This is great.
Yeah, it is. So. And I'll go with a personal story too. I definitely felt that too. I lost my identity, and but the thing is, I haven't found it. I'm still struggling. When I got out, when I got back from my first deployment to Afghan, I went down, bad path. People, like I said this in another podcast, people think it's all hunky glory in the military and stuff like that, bro. Like, you're 18 years old, you've seen some people blown up and whatever. You've seen some stuff that it's hard for to articulate, whatever. And then you're just like, I chose alcohol and drugs because, when you're over there and you see, the way that people live and everything like that, it gives you a new perspective of, how can God be real, with all this shit going on. And I've always grown up Christian and stuff like that, which I still believe. It's just I always would question it probably more than I should. Then, then, started training and stuff, whatever, got back. We went on another deployment to Afghan and stuff like that. But when I got out, and I met my wife, so whenever I met my wife, I quit all the drugs and everything else like that. Like I straightened up, I quit drinking as much and stuff like that. But I still felt a void inside my life. Like I still I lost my identity, and I'm still in the process of getting it back. But like when I went to the fire department, it's like when I went to Longview, is that like I finally was able. Like I think it's what for me what it was is the sense of purpose. Like I feel like like I know I'm just another number, but it's just like people enjoy me having me there. I have a purpose throughout my day. I have a job, and people rely on me to do good things. And I think that's probably the only thing that's saving me. And I know I'm not the only one that's talking about this or feels this way.
Everybody
That's why like I'm
does.
thinking about writing a book about it. I'm gonna call it The Void, and it's going into talking about like the mental
Yeah.
relation, getting out, transitioning out when you've always wanted to be something like, bro, I wanted to be a Marine since I was like 2 years old and I want to go fight wars. That's all I ever thought about. Whenever I got out, which the decision why I got out was because of all this is what we're talking about now that was affecting the Marine Corps and almost getting kicked out because of like hazing charges and stuff that I didn't find was hazing. But
Which you're cleared of.
yeah, it's just because, like I was just
For
a certain
clarity's
way.
sake.
For clarity.
Yeah. But like, I don't know, like, and I'm still like in that identity crisis of like just trying to find my purpose again and stuff like that. But I need to, instead of switching the purpose to being a firefighter now, I need to switch it to like being a Christian. I think
Yes.
I'm bringing my identity into another way, but like I'm trying to fight it, but it's just the way that it's fallen.
So to bring this back
Yeah.
around, and you
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
if we during my time, and it sounds like you also, there wasn't anybody I felt comfortable talking to this about. I knew that my parents would not understand, right? Because they're devout Christians, right? They wouldn't understand this doubt that I have, and so I wasn't comfortable talking to them. I didn't respect anybody at the church, so I didn't have any friends that I felt comfortable confiding in. There was no accountability really, and there was no group, family, which is what church is supposed to. That's why we congregate, is for that, right? And so I pulled away from all that, and coming back, then I had that. I was able to work through that with some people because then I was in Longview and on my own, and nobody knew me, so it was okay to kind of have to
Restart.
build those. Well, not just to restart, but to open up in some ways where like I'm a new person a little bit, right? And change some things. And so finding that is what we're trying to build in, what I'm trying to talk about building in for these children.
Yes.
So whenever they have those people gathered around them and they are having these issues, they can talk to them. The guy was on the podcast I had listened to. He talks about at the end where, which I think is maybe the same person, maybe not, I don't know. But he talks about how his friend was over at the house, and his friend noticed that something was wrong with his son. Right? His son wouldn't open up to him. He's like, "Can I talk to him?" And trusted friend of the family, right? Part of this circle that they had made. And he goes to talk to his son. Comes out. He said, "Look, nothing life-threatening. It's not drugs. It's not anything like that. It's just something he wanted to talk about." And I promised him I wouldn't talk to you about it if you're comfortable with that. And he said, to this day, he doesn't know what it was. But he saw a change in his son
Really?
over a month. Because he had someone he could trust as a mentor that was not his father, that little bit of degree of separation maybe, that was able to help him.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's
Sorry.
I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have is people. It hadn't been clearly defined for people what it looks like to be mentored, and there's not, there's not a lot of great mentors out there as far as in people's personal lives, right? I feel like for me personally, I had a good dad. He was a good provider, right? Obviously he failed in a lot of ways. He did a lot of things right. There was not one particular, even multiple people in my life that were clearly defined mentors. Somebody that I could gravitate to and say, I want to emulate that type of behavior, right? Or clearly define what manhood looks like. I'd see guys that were doing things right in life, and I feel like I'm in that current walk right now, right? Like, I don't think I've ever had that, right? But I have had to seek out mentors, right? Whether it be fire service related, spiritually related, whatever. And a lot of that comes through digestion of information, right? Through books, through podcasts, seeking out, and you have to be intentional about that. And if people don't have people in their lives like you as a dad who is intentional about doing that and being an intentional mentor for their children, they're not going to get that unless they seek it out. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, and they'll have to figure it out at the age of 30.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We're 32, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we kind of hit 2 bullet points there. We hit dedication to purpose and intentional decision making.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's talk a little bit more about intentional decision making, because I kind of want to understand y'all's context behind that. Whenever you made that bullet point, so what are you really referencing?
Not. It kind of goes along with it's a shade of integrity and confidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be the man who dithers, right? That doesn't mean make a hasty decision, but whenever something needs to be done, you're willing to do it and you're willing to see it through, along with the consistency stuff, right? That's kind of what I'm thinking of, because it's easy to not have that confidence to say, I know what's right. Going back to dropping that weight on my head, I told him this is a bad idea, but then I chose to be the first one to do it. So if it did go bad, and it did, it was me, right?
right.
And I should have just said no, and not done it, because it was clearly unsafe.
Yeah.
But that goes to everything in life. It's an important leadership trait. You read all these books, and you can't have a captain who can't make a decision confidently in a time of crisis, right? I have to be the guy who says we're going right and not left. And somebody says, we need to go up. And I'm like, no, and this is why. We're going right. You know, you have to be able to do that with knowledge and wisdom and all that stuff that has to go together. But you earn those things over time, but some people don't.
Yeah.
So you have to emulate that, what that looks like. You have to be willing to show your sons, I said this is why. Don't argue with me right now in this moment, when those moments happen, and they'll see that, right? They'll bring that into their own lives, I think.
Yeah.
Because Brad, you've been using the word intentional a lot lately. I guess it's because the 75 hard. What does it exactly mean to you as well? Is it kind of in the same context, or is it kind of a little bit different?
What does being intentional mean?
Yeah.
Being thought out. Like I said, like a lot of people, and we set lofty goals, which is a good thing, right? I think everybody needs to put pen to paper and set goals, because Craig Rochelle actually says this: you cannot change what you cannot clearly define. And so I think I think Zig Ziglar said, if you aim for nothingness, you'll hit it every time, right? So being intentional, I think, is actually setting a goal and then sweating the details, sweating the systems and processes, right? Like, I want to lose 10 pounds, right? That's a good goal for people to have, right? I want to work out more. I want to go to the gym. But, like, how do you put that into practice, okay? And being very specific and starting with an attainable goal, right? Like, if I want to lose 10 pounds, maybe it starts with, I wake up at 7 o'clock every morning, and I do that every morning so that way I can have time to go walk for 5 minutes, right, or 15 minutes, whatever it is, right, and be very specific with your goals and let those compound into habits, right? I think like if you're not intentional, or if you just set lofty goals and then don't sweat the details or don't sweat the systems and processes, I don't think it's going to happen, right? You can't maintain consistency if you haven't clearly defined what it is you're trying to go for. So.
And you feel like that 75 hard's been like helping you? Have you been like in your mind telling yourself, all right, everything I do from here on out is going to be intentional?
Yeah. So knowledge without action is useless, right?
Yeah.
We can know a lot about a lot of things, but if we don't put it into practice, it's as good as not knowing it at all. And I think 75 hard, what was appealing to me, like I said earlier, was it was an opportunity to be intentional about putting daily disciplines back in my life, right? I had been like, and I'm probably going to tell myself to a bad level here, but like I was drinking more than I wanted to be drinking. I wasn't exercising hardly at all. I was eating whatever I wanted. I was not being intentional about being a good dad, right? I'd sit on my phone and do the fat kid scroll while my wife was doing bath time and taking care of my kids. And I felt really like,
Fat kid scroll.
yeah, the fat kid scroll, you know. But yeah, I just felt like there's a lot of things. Like the only thing that we cannot replace in this life is time. That's our most, valuable commodity that we have on this earth is what we do with our time. And I felt like life was slipping through, and I knew all the right things to do, and I wasn't doing them. And so, yeah, I was just intentional. I think 75 hard, like it's not the greatest program in the world, but I saw it as an opportunity for me to just like do stuff that matters and kind of fall back into an appropriate rhythm for my life and start doing the things and being the man that I say I want to be, right? Like, and not just speaking a bunch of talk, but like actually, you know, doing it.
Yeah.
Right. I think this is a good opportunity for me to kind of start doing that and then just kind of carve other pockets where I want to be that, right? What would life look like if we were actually had follow through, right? Did the things that we said we were going to do, right? Like, yeah, man, I want to do this, right? And then you just like slough off or whatever, but actually like seeing it through. So
It goes back to saying how much time we don't have, right? If we
Yeah.
actually used all those minutes that we waste, you know, then
yeah, like your phone tells you, like my phone tells me every Sunday how much time I spend on social media.
yeah. mine
Right.
too.
And I'm like, this is disgusting.
Sick.
I'm worthless. Like, how can you spend so much time just staring at pictures of people? Like, it's dumb. Right? Like, it's dumb. Right? And like, you look at that and you're like, okay, I haven't been a great dad. I've been doing a lot of stuff I don't want to do. And so, yeah, it was 75 hard has been an opportunity for me to just kind of regain control of my life and just feel like, hey, I'm going to do the things that I want to do.
It's important.
and those are pretty dense. I might
Sweet.
not.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's work through it. Yeah.
And not that I want to talk about all of it, but I think there's a lot of good stuff there.
Brad, you got work tomorrow?
No, I'm off.
Oh, you're off tomorrow? For real?
Yeah, bro.
No way.
Yeah, I got vacay day.
Bro. I was a little worried that you got to.
No, dude. I'm here, dude. I get the next 3 days off with my kids. It's going to be great. I told Morgan, I was like, hey, I know I've been gone a lot, but like, this is important, and I'm going to be home the next 3 days. She was like, do your thing.
Really?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I don't
Love your wife. Submit to your husbands. Love your wife as Jesus loved the church, dude. So she
That's
submits,
right.
and I love her like Jesus loved the church.
Absolutely. Our content.
Compromise.
I don't think I realized how good our content was. Y'all might realize how good our content was. Like this whole podcast. It's been crazy.
Good.
I think it's good stuff.
It's been crazy.
I feel like I'm sitting at the fire station talking. You know,
That's
this
how
is the stuff that.
Kind of environment.
Are we starting?
Oh.
So who's going to be talking first? I know which camera should
Yeah, I'll start with warrior culture.
first.
I'll stay out. All right, ready? Yeah. All right, so guys, let's talk about warrior culture some. And there's a big misconception with this because there's things in the Bible that people it's a controversy on is like turning the other cheek. But it wasn't always like that. Because, I mean, we can go back to talk about, like, you know, times of Moses and stuff like that where us Christians have to stand up for what we believe in and what's right. And we have to kind of create them battles. And when you made this bullet point, I don't know if that's kind of what you're talking about. That's kind of where my mind went with it. Because as men, you know, like you are the protector of your family and like you're protector of everything. And like you tend to protect people you don't know. At least that's how I am. And I know that's probably how y'all are too. Like you protect for the good.
What's the intent of the sacrifice point we were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
That should be our default.
Yeah. And that's just how it is. And is that kind of what you're talking about with warrior culture or?
I meant in a slightly broader sense in that it's the solution to the toxic masculinity issue that we have.
I got you. Let's talk about that.
But it is definitely that too. That's an aspect of that having both the capability and the willingness to do violence for a good reason, a justifiable reason, is important. If Jordan Peterson talks about the rabbit, right? The rabbit is not virtuous because it can only be the victim. The Bible talks about the humble will inherit the earth, or the meek will inherit the earth, right? Meek doesn't mean weak.
Right.
It's a person capable of violence who chooses to use it properly,
Yep.
who chooses to be a protector. So the whole reason that people cite for putting their kids in martial arts is to teach them discipline. That part of that discipline is self-control. If you have a weak man who's broken and knows he's broken emotionally and physically weak through injury or biology, whatever, then he's gonna. That's where active shooters are. Those kids. There's a pattern to those children, right? They're preyed upon their entire lives, and so they feel like they have to act out, do this thing to justify, to validate themselves. Yeah, had they been validated in other ways, through empowerment, through developing their masculine,
Channeling what they have.
then they wouldn't be in those places. I don't think. And I think that the other side of that is placing men in a position to defend against those, because there's always going to be bad actors.
Yeah, there's
we
evil.
have to have, we have to have righteous fighters to combat the evil that is in the world.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by the warrior culture. We have to create that, because otherwise it's not channeled. It goes wild, and we don't have the men there to do the protecting.
Yeah, because there's an angelic battle going on right now, you know, between the evil and good, and Jesus and this Satan or whatever. But Brad, is that your same perspective on that, or do you have something a little bit different?
No, I think that's pretty good. That's pretty in line with how I feel about it. Yeah.
Good. Because like, and that's another thing that we see, especially today in society, is that if you know, violence is being looked down, and it should not be your first action. You know, it shouldn't. But like, it's looked as if like, man, it's hard for me to articulate it because it's looked down against, and I understand why it's looked down against, but sometimes violence is the answer. I mean, like, I got a good example, California. So if somebody breaks in your house in California and they're robbing you, and your family's in danger, you're still going to get in trouble if you shoot that guy.
Even if you fight them,
Yeah.
right? You're assaulting them.
Yeah.
Because everything's so twisted there. They have a right to the squatter's rights. You know, they can take your home, and you can't evict them.
No. And that's what we're talking about. Like, as men, we're obligated as we're a protector, and we're like a physical protector that, you know, angels are protecting us, or whatever. We could talk about that as well. But like, we are here, and this is what God expects of us to do, is protect our families. And it's not only in violence; it's with everything. But and as far as myself, you know, and I think, you know, as we're all like, you know, very alpha male personalities, that we're very, I guess, aggressive in nature, and maybe just not violent, but we're just aggressive people. But if anything took the stand of us having to protect our family, we would do it. You know, you know, and we go back to talk about this after shooter stuff, and like, they're trying to take away our guns and everything else like that. It's not the answer. And essentially, this conversation, what we talked prior to this, is the answer, and the way that they're funneling that. But it's kind of confusing for me, at least, is that they don't see it like how we see it, you know? Because, like, yes, like, these guys are mentally ill and stuff are shooting these places up, but like, there's a reason for that. Like, no sound mind just goes and wants to shoot up a school or anything else like that. But
mental health is a whole,
you know,
it's only getting worse, right?
Yeah.
And widespread, and there's lots of causes for that. The breakdown of society, antidepressants. You know, we also have opinions on things that we don't have to delve into right now.
Yeah.
Angelic warfare. You know, the power of the demons in our lives and how we let them take hold of us. But that's what we have to teach our boys. That's the whole point, is to teach them, to expose them. Again, to go back to Jordan Peterson, because he's so prolific. You can't get away from this guy, right?
Yeah.
He talks about inoculating your children in 12 more rules for life.
What does he mean by that, though?
Inoculating your children from evil by exposing them. You can't shelter your kids.
Yeah.
Stress inoculation, kind of the same vein as that.
Yeah. No, it's
like
look,
that.
this is what evil is. Do you see this? We were at the gas station the other day, and the cashier was tweaking out. I mean, obviously high on meth.
Yeah.
And she, body type, teeth, all this stuff, all the mannerisms.
We're not judging. We're just
No, we see it every day.
I mean, it's easy to pick out when you see it every day.
Yeah.
But I wanted to show my children. I was like, when we left, I said, "Did you see her?" To my oldest two. I said, "She was high." And you know, she's not a threat to you, but that's what that looks like. Because I know they saw her, that you cannot not see that person and see that this is different, right? So I gave them an explanation for what it was. That's the pattern, right? And this is their pattern recognition for life. So when they see that person, maybe it's a man and he's tweaking. And my daughter's coming home from a concert one day, and she remembers that memory, maybe subconsciously, and it cues something. We had a whole conversation earlier while we were off air. We should probably had it on here.
Yeah, true.
Right. But that stress inoculation is not placing them in danger, but exposing them in a safe way to the realities of life so that they can deal with them in a healthy way. Explaining what death is to a kid's hard, but people are going to die.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, I think, part of the mental health issue. I think there's an argument to be made for the dang it, what's it called? PTSD in our military. You go back to the studies they did, or the reports they did after World War II. The idea was we're going to carpet bomb these cities, and all the people in the city will want us to stop fighting. But it didn't work. We just killed millions of people, or however many. And the people in those cities didn't have PTSD. It was the soldiers that had the PTSD. And that's because they didn't have a justifiable reason for the violence that happened to them. Right? The people there knew they were victims. They knew and understood there's a bad evil out there and it's trying to kill me, and I'm a survivor. The soldiers going into battle, they didn't want to kill that guy. At Christmas, they sang carols together across the trenches.
Right.
You know, and they were forced into that situation, forced to do things that they didn't want to do. And that's well, I think this is like on Killing.
Yeah.
That he talks about this.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's that bleeds over into other things. You know, kids aren't raised butchering animals anymore.
Yeah, but how do you develop that warrior culture with any kid without like?
I think I don't know.
I don't want to scar them. We don't want to damage them, right? But if you're a helicopter parent, and I see this, my kids growing up at going to the playground, my kids will be twirling around on the monkey bars, and then you'll have some mom standing underneath their kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like one thing that I come back to is like my son, right? Like it's very easy, like when they hurt themselves, to like want to coddle them because you just like you don't want to see them hurt, but at the end of the day, like you have to recognize like there's a building process there, right? If you just coddle them their whole life, then they're
or if you don't even let them do the thing.
Sure, yeah, like you got to let them. You have to let them fail in a controlled environment, I guess is the way to put that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can't sit there and coddle them. Like there was a balance for me. You talk about like going too far. Like my oldest son, Graham, I think I went a little too far with it because he's that dude will like run into a wall with his head and just like be fine. But growing up, like when he was real young, he would like fall on her some, start crying, and they immediately like look to you for a response. Like, how should I be crying? Like, is this a bad
learning
situation?
every time.
Yes, and so I think it's super important to like be mindful of your response, even like facially, like how you respond to that, how you address that. And I would always tell him like, like grab his hand and make him hit his chest, like, hey, I'm tough, right? And then like the tears would start to, and then throughout the years I would do that, and it got to a point where like he'd fall and hit himself. And he's like, oh, I'm tough, like.
I love that.
Yeah,
I like that.
Awesome.
Yeah,
yes,
that's awesome.
yeah, and so like, but you breed it into him, right? And I think that goes back to that warrior mindset. Is like you start to cultivate that attitude when they encounter an obstacle, whether it be pain.
That's so much better than saying "stop crying like a girl."
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like okay, right, and then they have because they're formative in their young years, and like okay, women cry, right, and then it's not okay for men to cry, right? Let's talk about that, right? We talk about toxic masculinity, right? Like, but not to get off that rabbit trail.
Well, but then they hear that later and they're like, well, my dad said that to me, so he
I'm
must
not
be a
supposed to
misogynist.
cry, like and I'm not supposed to show emotion, right? Like, and no, that's not the case at all. But with like our youngest, like he's not taking the same tact because I think he's a little more on the coddled end, and I'm trying. Like, we're currently in that season. Where I'm trying to
Like we
break
said,
that.
they're all different.
Like,
they're
They are, dude. Like the dude will like fart too hard, and then it's just like the world is ruined. It's over. Like.
So like, I know I'm about to get dark with this conversation.
Let's
Come
do
back
it.
to warrior culture. Sorry. So this is kind of a question for both because I don't have to answer because I've never been in this position or had this conversation. But how would you prepare like a child of yours if they needed to take a life?
Well, look, let's tone it down a little bit. I can speak from experience.
Yeah.
Just to enact violence,
Yes.
because I think that's a scale, right?
Yeah.
I think if you're willing to act on that scale in any capacity, then you can project your actions out, right? That good off the cuff answer for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, growing up, my dad would always like box with us, right? And he would always tell us, "You got to block." He'd be all punching, not that to hit us, but we got pretty good at blocking, you know. And I could still move my hands a lot faster than people expect to protect my face and head,
Yeah.
and not out of anger, very controlled. Don't take that wrong, but this was his training. And I remember asking him multiple times, "When are you going to teach me how to punch?" He said, "When you can block everything," which was never, right?
Yeah.
So I started teaching myself how to punch. Fast forward to me being a young man, going to bars and drinking and, dancing with all the ladies, pissing off everybody because I'm a much better dancer than them.
Yeah.
Stealing the girls, And there was many times where I got in fights, but I never hit anybody. I would either, dodge and take them to the ground and walk away, and bouncer would come up and be like, who did it? And I didn't hit him, or to the point of one time, outsmarting him. One time I kicked this guy's feet a couple of times because he was standing on the dance floor. I didn't know he was standing on the dance floor because I was dancing with his girlfriend. So I told her, I could see he was mad. I was like, I'm just going to go talk to him. Clear the air. I don't want to have to fight him. I walk over there. I didn't realize it, but I walk into a table. Well, all the tables were his friends.
Oh, awesome.
Right?
Situations I love to be in.
Yeah, so I was in
Block
a losing
City.
position no matter what. So there's this little leprechaun, short 5'0" guy that kept bumping me with his belly. I was like, stop touching me. And there's this giant of a man in front of me who kept putting his hand in my chest like this, and he's just mouthing. I was like, dude, this is going to be bad. And 7 guys. So I convinced all of them that he was too weak to fight me by himself and too cowardly. He was only mouthing off because they were there. If he was really as tough as they say, then they'd all sit down and let me fight him one-on-one. Mm-hmm. And every one of them sat down, and he jumped up on a dance floor and started calling for a bouncer. So I put my hat back on and said, I told you so. And they all stood up and walked out without speaking to him. I won. I didn't have to fight him. I didn't get in trouble. Uh-huh. I mean, there's been plenty of times when I wanted to hurt people.
Yeah.
But so I tell that story because my dad taught me that way. Right? He probably saw that in me, that I could probably punch people and hurt them. But I needed to know how to defend them myself instead first. And that was the first thing he taught me to do. And I've never needed to punch somebody in a fight. I mean, I did Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. I know how. Mm-hmm. But it's always served me well. So to scale that up, I mean, perfectly willing to do that. I've had 2 chances where I got to that point right there. Had a woman follow my wife home. Oh, I get angry thinking about it. And I happened to be in the driveway, and he almost got shot. But I had the restraint to go as far as drawing my weapon while he climbed in the truck saying he was going to get his before showing me his hands and driving away.
Yeah.
Right? And another guy opened the door, and I thought he was stealing my child while we're sitting waiting to watch the lights, and he almost got hurt pretty bad too. And but I had restraint. I had that. I know I have that capacity because I've been just under it, and luckily didn't have to.
Yeah, that's the beauty of stress inoculation training, right? Like in a controlled environment, that's what your dad was essentially doing with you, right? He was stress inoculating you. They talk about stress inoculation in the military, and you may be better versed in it than I am, but basically, like when we do things, like we encounter an obstacle or something that is unfamiliar, and our heart rate goes up, our focus starts, we get that adrenaline hit, right? You get that tunnel vision, but you expose yourself to that environment so many times, and there's studies out there that are way better than articulating than I am, but you expose yourself that to enough, well, you start to get in that. Same thing with firefighting, right? Like your first structure fire, dude, you're like wound up like like whatever, you're ready to go, and you're looking through a pinhole. Your heart rate's going through the roof, and you're thinking about things that now today you wouldn't even give a thought to, right?
That's like a speech that I give these guys.
That's it. That's stress inoculation, right? You get exposed so many times that it just becomes familiar, right?
And then you see the bigger picture.
Yeah, you've blocked so many punches so many times, the process of de-escalation, and that's how you win.
Because the stress didn't start at that point.
Yeah.
Right. If the first time you'd ever been exposed to that environment is when that dude followed your wife home, like
I would have shot him.
Right. And so, no, that's good.
I mean, I remember one time where I was just standing there talking to this girl. I mean, I didn't take girls home. I was like the guy who was always there dancing. Like they were comfortable with me, right? Because I'm not the kind of guy who just takes girls home. I don't do that. But me and my buddy, that's what we did. We're firemen. We got every third day off. So Tuesday and Thursday, we were out there dancing.
Way better man than I was.
Well, I mean, I remember one time I was standing there talking to this girl, and out of the corner of my eye, there was another woman standing here who I didn't know. I saw something. I put my arm around her, and some random guy came smashing into it. Right? I saved her from getting crushed. He had been in a fight behind us that we didn't know about. Subconsciously, I recognized it. Her boyfriend got mad at me because it emasculated him that I saved her. And then this guy said, I punched him, and so I was like, I didn't do any of that. The bartender's like, no, dude, you saved that chick when the cop came and talked to me, but it was an unconscious action because it was trained, right, to act when I saw that happening. Take it back to firefighting, and that's why we train, so we don't have to be stressed out. That's why I give speeches about not wearing your mask, which is my opinion. No, it's controversial. I want you to see that building so that whenever you see it 15 years from now, you know what the inside of it looks like before you go in.
Yeah, I think like there's something that we do in the mentor program. I don't know, I can't think off the cuff what the name of the drill is, but the drill is basically it's stress inoculation. We'll take the guys, and I feel like you went through it. We'll teach them all the skills, right? We teach them a core set of skills, right? How to react if you have a pack failure, right?
Oh yeah, we did that.
How to react if you vomit in your mask. How to react if like you need to take your pack off and put it back on. And then we take all these skills, we teach them the skills, and then we black them out. We turn all the lights off. We turn loud music up, and we create a very distracting environment. And then we tell them to perform these skills, right? We hand them a coupling. Hey, which way are you going? And then we almost do it to where they're almost done with the task, and then we give them another task. And we just get that heart rate up, and we get them stress inoculated. Now, I feel with stress inoculation training, like you have to be very careful, because if you go too far and you push people past their limits, you build training scars, and then you ruin the drill. So you have to, going back to meeting people where they're at, you have to meet them where they're at and scale it to their ability, right? But I think it's an incredible drill that you can perform to get people in that environment when they just want to stop, they want to quit, right? They want to pull their mask off. Obviously, we don't want to do that because that's bad.
But that's
right?
the first thing you want to do. That's what the blast mask
I
is
wanted
so
to
good.
do. I remember telling Holland whenever y'all do that with me, I'm like, bro, I'm kind of freaking out right now. And I said it calmly. I'm like, bro, I'm kind of freaking out right now.
Yep. And that's the goal, right? We want to get you to that point where you're kind of freaking out, but you're still able to function, right? And then you do that for a long enough period of time in that sequential order, and you're doing all these things, right? I think it's like we hand you a coupling, we make you like lay down, take your pack off, put your pack back on, get your cutters out, turn your flashlight on. Hey, what's your air at? Hey, call a mayday, right? We do all these things, and like they get one drill almost done, right? They've almost got their pack on. It's like, hey, take your pack back off, right? Or shift your pack to the left side, right? And we do all these things, and they start getting flustered. But
I do that with the written Mayday stuff. The first one is just we're literally going to walk in and find them, which is most of our searches, right? And then at the end, it's on the second floor of old 3, and it's completely blacked out, and I'm not giving you any instruction at all. I'm watching you with a tick, and maybe every now and then I kick you to make you a little bit disoriented, or I'll pull a strap out whenever you're trying to do a conversion, you know, and let them struggle.
Yes.
To the point of almost it being bad. And they'd be like, all right, stop. Look, this is what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, put your hand here. That's where it is. This is what happened. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
You have to be careful, I think, though, because, like, I don't tell, and I don't know, it sounds like I'm being exclusive. I kind of am. Like, I don't tell everybody about that drill because under the wrong instruction, you can damage somebody. You can make them worse than what they started.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
I could see where you could.
Yeah, and so you, like stress inoculation, as you've seen firsthand with your dad, like it's a very fruitful thing, right? Done in the right manner. Right?
Yeah, I've never termed it stress inoculation more as just, you know, fight training, but it is what it is.
Yeah,
in
you
its own
inoculate
way.
yourself to the stress, right? When your dad is like throwing these punches at you and your heart rate's up, you even said it. I don't even think you realized it. Like I got to the point where I was blocking and I was still calm, like it wasn't because you got to the point where you're inoculated to that stress, right? Like you're able to work around that and think and have cognitive thought about what you were doing instead of just being the first time you're doing it, you're just getting smashed and you're trying to like throw your hands up. So
Also, my dad has gorilla arms. He's like, he's my height, but his reach is like 6'2".
man.
So
if I see you,
can't
I don't
get
want to
in on
see
it.
your dad.
Yeah, but going back into that, you know, because I see where that has a role. And so, like, it's, prepping your child if they needed to take a life. Would you expose them to evil? Is that what you mean by that?
They have
Or
to have
would
an
you-
understanding what it is.
Would you train them to be able to take a life? Or, like...
You have to give them the ability to be able to elicit violence, but they have to understand its context and when. I think one thing I learned
We don't
here
want to
is-
make psychopaths.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's going to change your life forever. If they have to make
Yes.
that decision, I'll let them know now. It will change their life forever.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a place for saying, look, if your mother or your sisters or, you know, something bad's happening, when that boy is of age and capable of that thought process, which is probably not before 15, depending on the kid.
Right.
in the current age that we live in, you know, and that's, I mentioned earlier, the butchering of animals and understanding what that is. Even me, the first time I put my hand inside an animal to pull the guts out, I was like, oh, it's warm. That's weird. It's weird. You don't think about the chicken you buy at the store coming out of the refrigerator being alive and warm, right? So that's a different, not that we're going to do that.
I think they have to give validation behind it. I think someone
to make that decision takes a lot.
Yes.
And so that's a advanced skill.
So like one thing I learned recently as far as like acquiring new skills, like how we teach skills, because this is a skill, right? And even this can relate to the fire service, right? We do a really good job of telling you what the skill is, right? Teaching you why we perform that skill, right? Whether it be to take somebody's life or pull hose, force a door, whatever it is, we do a really good job teaching you a little bit of the why, and then we show you how. What we fail so often is teaching you when, right? When do we perform this skill, right? When do we do this? So as far as like how to take a life, well, we talk about what, we talk a little bit of the why. We may show you how, right? Give you firearms training and all that, right? And or whatever it is, right? Tactically, but this is when you apply that, right?
Bro,
and I think
that's
that
amazing.
And right? It's super profound when I heard that. Like, but you have to give the context, and then you got to meet them where they're at as a child, right? Like you're not gonna try to explain when to take a life to a 12-year-old. I mean, at least not in our day and age. I mean, maybe you would, depending on your given circumstance. But like, I feel like there's a maturity level that comes with that. Like at a young age, like my dad always had guns around the house, and like even when I was 8 years old, like I remember like having the doorbell ring and like going to my dad's, because I was babysitting my little brother, and like going and grabbing the gun and walking to the front door and like, can I help you? Right. You know, and like, I maybe not had the greatest context of when, but I knew in that circumstance, my dad has illicitly told me if somebody comes to the door and it's not me and you don't know who they are, that gun better be in your hand. Right. I knew the when, right. And I knew the how. So I think given
You should know what would be the when to apply it.
Well, I knew in that given circumstance. I think the older you get and the more mature you get, you can broaden that sense of when.
That's the wisdom.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the thing we always say in the fire service? This is what we're going to do. This is why you do it. Conditionally.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Sure.
Conditions dependent. We say that all the time.
That's true.
And that goes back to what we're talking about.
Yeah, it does.
But what are those other conditions? And we skip over that. We're like, this is what we're going to do, and this is why.
Yes.
Conditions dependent. You know, sometimes there's other things.
Yes.
And then they're like,
Yeah. So
well, what are those?
Yeah,
what
so-
other tools do I have to have in my bag for those situations?
yeah, the concept. So I could just quote this, like reference, is from Aaron Fields, right? With nozzle forward, he's the one where I kind of got that from, was the what, the why, explain the when, right? We get those three, and you got to explain the when, and then we show you how. And basically, he breaks the when down to keystone evolutions, right? So as his area of expertise is pulling hose, right? That's what he's an engine guy, right? So he basically gives you these keystone evolutions, right? A ranch style home, a shotgun shack, and an L-shaped house, right? I've taught you what, I teach you why, and then I teach you when. These keystone evolutions, and then I expose you to that environment, and I let you make the decision because I showed you how.
Understanding and assessing a building is its own class.
Sure. Yeah, but as far as
So,
like
the
how you
principle
apply,
of it,
yeah.
Well, I think it's missing. I say that because I was even talking to my dad about this morning, looking at a building and saying, all right, it's this time era because I recognize these key features.
Yeah.
Probably what the interior looks like. Probably that's going to mean these pitfalls, balloon frame, as opposed to maybe there's a garage that's been blocked in. It's probably going to have a void space under it to get it level.
Yeah.
You know, a split level home. In the 80s, they were prevalent for no reason. You know, looking at a house and being able to do that assessment is a wisdom thing over time. But I feel like that's a class that somebody could really do a good job of putting together, just like reading smoke.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's Scott Thompson that said, if a firefighter could learn and be good at only two things in their career, it would be fire behavior and building construction.
Yeah.
Period.
So one thing I want to talk about, and I've kind of just thought of this on top of my head. When you're teaching your child, a lot of things are like when you're developing your man, or like you're developing his manhood or whatever. A lot of actions are based off what you tell him. When do you start teaching him an initiative? When he starts thinking on his own, him being a well thought out person individually, or without maybe doing stuff before you ask him to. How would you instill that in a child?
That starts at the beginning. Every time that my boys have ever required a sit-down conversation for a spanking, which, I mean, every spanking gets some kind of conversation, right? And then, like you said, at the end, this is why and all that. If they did something like hit their sister or something, or lie on them or something, which one of my sons does all the time on his little sister, right? That the conversation is always, she's your job. Your job is to protect her. And so I'm putting that in him early, right? And now I can get some remorse out of things like that. You know, you broke her heart when you did that. You know, she's not going to trust you if you continue doing things like this. And she has to be your friend for the rest of your life. Or my boys, you two have to be each other's battle buddy your entire lifetime.
Yeah.
The only friend you're going to have forever is him. You have to treat him right.
That's good.
You know, and that's for as long as they've been around. That's what I've been trying to teach them.
Because I can't even tell you when I learned initiative was so important and how like it's made me so successful in life. It made me successful in the Marine Corps, it made me successful maybe in the fire service. But like that's a characteristic that I feel like it'd be hard to teach.
I think the dishes are good for that. My older two, I got 12 and a 10-year-old now, boy and a girl, and they trade off 1 month at a time. They do them by themselves so that if the dishwasher's empty, they've got ahead of the game, people can put dishes in the dishwasher for you. You know, if you're thinking ahead and you're doing your chore, which is like the only chore they really have, a real chore, then everyone else can rinse their own dishes and put them in the dishwasher. If not, we're going to eat dinner after homework and you want to go play or get ready for bed, and you're going to have a thing full of dishes that you have to do all of it. You know?
And they see the consequence.
Yeah. I'm trying to, and they haven't caught on yet, but
I think initiative being like the ability to like self-start, right?
Yes.
So one thing that resonated with me a while back was like you have two kinds of exceptional leaders. You have a good leader, right? And then you have a great leader, right? Follow me.
Yeah.
So a good leader being somebody that creates a sound work environment, right? You have a good culture, right? Like guys are performing well. It's a healthy environment. But great leaders, and I think the differentiation is great leaders empower their subordinates, if you will, to be leaders, right? And so creating initiative, I think comes from being intentional about empowering the people that you're over, right?
So like you mean by that like empowering kids?
Yeah. So
In which way would you do that?
So for me, like Cap saying with his kids in the dishes, like to empower them to make decisions on their own, right? In a controlled environment, right? Not give them too much responsibility, but you have to let them fail because they've got to, like you said, like you have to give them the responsibility, knowing that there's an opportunity that they could fail, and most likely will fail. But that's how we grow, right? We make mistakes and we learn from them, hopefully, and then we grow. So I think to create initiative, you have to create an opportunity to fail and create a culture and environment where it's okay to fail. Right at the house, right? Like understanding that there's a consequence to an extent, right? But giving people the ability to fail and not being so scrutinizing and like browbeating, like when you make a mistake, because if you fail, you learn, and then if you learn, hopefully there's a positive response next time, and then you start creating that initiative.
Well, you burn your hand on the stove enough times, you're going to learn that.
Yeah.
Maybe I should turn it off first.
Right.
You know, Groeschel talks about this in terms of motivation and inspiration. You can motivate your people from a leadership perspective every day, and you can work and keep them hyped up and keep them doing that thing they probably don't want to do, or you can inspire them and make them self-motivated, right? And you create a different atmosphere for that. You give them the motivation. If you're a leader and you're off, say at the fire station, I'm off for a couple of shifts, and we have inspections that need to be done. If my intentions are made clear and they respect me, then they'll do the things that need to be done. They'll go out and do an inspection.
Yeah. That's why I think initiative is so important characteristic as a man.
Right.
Because it not only affects your home life or whatever, it affects your job. If you can have initiative not just at home but on your job, like it makes you successful ongoing throughout life. To me, I feel like initiative is what made me successful today.
You're a highly motivated person.
Yeah, you are.
But I think motivation brings initiative.
You don't get that by accident.
Yeah, it's acquired, right?
Yeah.
It's a learned thing.
But I think it's initiative. I don't know what comes first. I don't know if motivation comes first then initiative, or initiative then comes on motivation.
I think they kind of go hand in hand. But because you can be motivated, I guess, and do which we see this in our new firefighters, right? They don't. They're motivated, and they're even self-driven to do something, but they don't know what to do, right? So they're spinning their wheels, doing mopping at 7 o'clock in the morning. Breakfast is not even on the table yet. Now we got to
Yeah.
walk on the wet floor. All right, good job.
Yeah.
Way to be motivated, but the initiative is in the wrong place right now, right? We got to focus that, and you have to learn. So part of it's just wisdom and experience to some degree.
Yeah.
But I think they are somewhat different in that you're motivated to do a certain thing by something else, right? There's an outside influence for motivation, and initiative comes from your desire to do the thing. So whether that's for your own personal growth or your business or to be a better Marine or a fireman, that's something that springs out of you. It doesn't have to be prodded. If it's a negative browbeating thing from that person, they've broken you emotionally, and now you feel you got Stockholm syndrome at work. Then that's terrible.
no, it's not. It's not that. It's just like so in debt to my leader or whatever of like just whenever I talk about leadership, I'll go ahead and say this because I say it all the time because I was always told this is that leadership is really based off genuine love for somebody.
100%.
Now it's something I've heard whenever I was in the military, and it's something that's always transpired within me. And so like going into that, just like I'm indebted to my leadership so much because I know they love me. Is that I want to make sure everything that I do is the best, and I want to do it the best of my ability. And by doing that is doing things before they even tell me what to do. That's just how I show that I do care. And in the same essence, I really don't even know where I was going with this.
Well, do you know when he told me that about himself? That thought process is the shift before he put in to go.
To go work for Captain.
No, I did not. Was it really?
Yeah. Let me tell you about what leadership means to me. Love from my commander really breeds, I remember this person. Next shift, hey, I'm going out to Station 1. Nicholson wants me out there.
It's all right.
But
Betrayal hurts.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Cuts
I do love you. I do love you. But
that's fine.
I don't know. Like it is to me. That means just so much to me. And I've always just thought about like that. How would you like dwell that in somebody? And I was listening to some podcasts that associated this conversation. Is that how would you dwell that into a man? And all these are valid points to that. But I think it goes beyond that. I just don't have answers for it.
So that's where that starts, right? The man you told me about, you told me to take a bullet for him.
Yeah.
And I believe you. I think you were 100% being truthful when you said that. So you wouldn't do that for somebody you didn't have respect for. You wouldn't have that emotion, right? So if you're at a station and you have a officer who has broken trust with you, who doesn't have the integrity that you expect, then you're not going to be willing to do the work for him when he's on vacation. Yeah. You're going to be like, let him fail.
That's right.
That's true.
Yeah,
I like that.
It's who you work for. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think it's good. I think it's being a good leader, working for good leaders.
It also goes into marriage, right? This is how marriages fail. You lose respect. Women need love. Men need respect. If they lose respect for us, though, then they fall out of love. That's part of that relationship. That's part of us to maintain ourselves and keep that integrity with them and the vows we've taken and who they expect us to be, the provider, all that stuff. If you've lost that, then they lose that side also, right? That falls away naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, if you don't have somebody that's gonna serve you and put your needs first, like it's hard to reciprocate that, right?
I'm sure your kids look at you the same way.
Yeah, a father-son, father-daughter bond is obviously going to be, if they don't feel safe with you, if you've done things that are so bad that you've broken that child's heart and they don't feel like you're going to be the one to be there, then, I mean, they're not going to grow up loving and respecting you. That's going to be a hard one to get back. You see that all the time, I don't know. I haven't had any experience with having a broken family. I tell people all the time, I can't give you any advice on this. Divorce, broken family stuff, I got nothing. I've been very lucky. I don't know, maybe y'all can talk about that.
I've experienced some stuff, but I mean, my parents have always been married.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one defining moment, and we talk about manhood and like the transition into manhood. I remember my dad, just to save face for my dad, I'll kind of be a little cryptic, but they were going through some stuff. I remember being 14 years old. My mom told me we were going on a family vacation. I was like, all right, dope. And we're going to Florida to the beach. And I remember my mom somberly was like, hey, I need to talk to you. I was like, okay, it's not good. And we went down and she talked to me and she was like, hey, stuff with me and your dad's not working out. Based on my faith and my beliefs, I don't believe in divorce. I'm not divorcing your dad, but we're not living in there. And at the time we were living close to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we moved that vacation. Like I didn't have time to say bye to friends or anything, and we moved to Texas, back to Texas.
Really? I didn't know you lived in New Mexico.
Yeah, I lived in New Mexico for about 6 years, and just like that, like in a day, we moved back to Texas, and just like I remember feeling that like personal responsibility to like be in ways like kind of a father figure to my younger sibling. I'm the oldest of 4, 2 younger brothers and a sister, and the second closest to me is 5 years, and there's just a lot of responsibility that kind of fell in my lap for a time. You know, my dad kind of got right, and things got back to normal, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Damn, I didn't.
So how
not know
did that
about you.
affect your relationship
With my dad?
long-term? Yeah.
Initially there's some bitterness and some stuff that I even held on into my adult years. But
So there you go.
Yeah.
That carries on for a lot longer.
yeah,
than
it does.
if it's
And it put the way that I viewed my dad in a different lens. Unfortunately, you know, I mean, it's water under the bridge now. You know, I've forgiven my dad, and he's obviously made amends, and things are right between that situation. But you know, it was a defining moment in my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some things changed.
So we can have a huge impact on our kids, and even positive ways. Obviously, we already talked about they're always watching, but even our smallest mistakes.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
not a
they're
lot
always
of room
watching.
for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. So this is well, I want to go ahead and start to kind of transition this into like the rite of passage and stuff. And I'm just curious, what are 5 characteristics that you think takes to become a man? Like important traits that you must have.
We just take turns
Yeah.
listing off our favorites.
Sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
I guess I'll start with you have to see the maturity of that boy beginning at least, if not begin coming into fruition. So that's not period at this 13 years old. It happens. It's you see them starting to listen to you and starting to build and take on responsibilities on their own and that sort of thing. I think you have to see that they're ready mentally to understand what you're about to give them and the task that you're about to give them. You know.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think like unpacking that further, like within maturity, I think like you can pull some characteristics out of that, like starting to take ownership of things, right? I think that's a huge one. Yeah, ownership, like within that maturity realm. I don't know. That's a hard question, man.
I think it's the taking ownership is a big one.
Yeah,
It's not really
accountability.
the same as maturity either.
No.
The self accountability and taking initiative kind of all fall.
Because
in
there's
the same
honestly 2
category.
words that fall with that. It's accountability and integrity
Yeah.
that fall along that realm. You know,
Mm-hmm.
It's not simple.
No, that's a life skill,
yeah.
lifetime skill.
Yes.
I had one on the top of my head and I lost it. I was going to change course just a little.
Come on.
What if, on the negative side of things, you might have to accelerate it, right? Tragedy happens.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
like
true.
in my
Yeah.
case.
In your case,
Yeah.
like you just said, or you lose a father and someone has to step in and they're like, all right, look, this is a maturing moment. Now you have to step up to a different place. Maybe they're 11, or maybe they're 13 and still weren't ready for it, but now they have to be.
Right.
Maybe they lose their mother and they have to be there living with their father and siblings, So that could be the other side of things, that they're literally forced through circumstance into it.
Yeah. The initial question was 5 characteristics that define manhood.
Yeah, to say like a man needs to carry.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about moving into the ritual. It's
We
what
are.
are the
We're
ones we
about
want
to.
to put
We're about,
into?
yeah, we're about to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of like trying to use these five
Oh, I gotcha.
characteristics and transition in that.
Like, hey, it's
into
time
the-
to start transitioning.
Self-discipline, integrity,
Yes. Yeah.
courage, the beginnings of wisdom, being able to
Yep.
put those things together. What else? You said accountability.
Yeah.
So I think all those things in that category, they have to be present in some sense, or at least
Yeah.
within reach of the kid. Or else if they're outside of their reach, and you clearly know this kid is not taking responsibility for anything, then you can't say, "Well, I'm moving you into the realm of manhood," because
Yes.
How do you pull that out of a kid? I'm kind of curious. Like, you know what I'm like, because you have, especially in today's generation, you've got these guys that are coming up and they're coming out of high school and out of college, and like they're still not like nobody has ushered them into like that.
that's why this needs
That-
to be a thing.
Yeah, that's why I was about to get into
Because
that.
when they get hired at the fire department or wherever, this is an ongoing conversation. We have to teach them all the stuff, right? And this has become part of my new hire speech when they come out to the station. I'm like, look, I just had this with our newest one. I was like, look, I don't know what your situation was with your father. I don't know what he taught you about being a man, but these are the things I expect. And these are the things I'm going to hit you on. You know, you have to have integrity. You have to be courageous and willing to do the job. This is a dangerous, scary job sometimes. You have to be resilient and fit. You have to do these things, or else you're going to fail at this job. You may not get fired, but you're going to fail.
Yeah, I think it's important though. Like, we talk about that, which I know you're like, I'm preaching to the choir on this, but like, I think we do a really good job, or I'd say a decent job in our fire department specifically, doing that, right? Talking that talk, if you will. I think we need to put more of an emphasis on living it out, right? A lot of people like,
Oh, absolutely.
a lot of people like, well, they'll talk the talk, and I'm no exception, right? I'm just as guilty as most, but like, we preach this stuff, but then we don't put it into practice in our own lives, and I think that's where we're failing them in a lot of ways.
Well,
You
I
know?
hope none of you are not having integrity, and I hope none of you are cowards.
Yeah.
So, but I know that the physical fitness part is something that we've, as a department, come a long way on.
Yeah.
And you know, like I said, I was 256, 258 3 months ago. You know, and that's unacceptable.
Sure.
I recognize that,
Right, but you have the discipline to make the change, and you did recognize that.
but
right?
I couldn't talk that talk when I was there.
True.
Right, that's hard to do.
Right.
I didn't look, I don't think, I
Right.
mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I looked like I was nearly 260. I carried it pretty decently. But I've lost a lot of weight, and I've gotten in a lot better shape. I can breathe better now. Not specifically because of that, probably because I've been running, and my lungs are beginning to heal, I think, finally from the pneumonia and the COVID and all the other stuff, whatever. But it's hard to, you don't want to be a hypocrite. And so
Right.
you're right. You can't be out gossiping and about some guy at another station, and then meanwhile you're like, hey, why are you talking bad about somebody?
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
you know, I'm a leader and we're going to have positive outlook today, and then turn around and start
Complaining.
bitching about admin. You can't
Right.
do that. You have to maintain yourself too.
Sure.
I think it's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm going to transition y'all to. And I'm about to put y'all kind of on the spot.
go.
Because there's a reason why I kind of had y'all two come together. But it's kind of a challenge for y'all that I wanted y'all to do. It's something because, like, I know there's something's missing, and we've talked about it. I've had this conversation with y'all separately, but y'all have never really, I guess, talked about it together. Have y'all?
Maybe. I don't know
Maybe
what
in
you're talking about.
passing, but we don't know what the topic. What's the spot that we're on?
Like, I really want to challenge y'all to put something together, like a program, and patent it, and I'll fund it.
Well, that'd be
A program as far as like,
Something that like I would be able to give my kids, and be able to implement this with them.
yeah.
proverbials from Leddy and Conrado.
Yeah.
Well, I think, and I've thought about this a lot and not done except for that much on it. I've talked with other people
It's
about
a $1
it.
million idea. I'm telling you that now. There is, because I've researched it, and there's really nothing essentially out there that's a program that's, I mean, yeah, you can sell it, whatever, but it goes beyond that. I mean, nothing's free these days, obviously. But I think it really is, and I think it's something that's needed. And I know I'm in no position to be able to put something out there like that out.
Well, the situation that we're in
Don't
is
kid
it
yourself.
would need to be a coaching for the parents.
Yeah, I think like,
You know, it wouldn't
Yeah.
be us
Yeah.
handing them a thing. It would be like, look, this is the preparation work you're going to have to do
Yeah.
in the next few years so that you can be this example.
Essentially coaching myself, because it's like that's something I just don't have. That's kind of why
Okay.
I've been thinking about this for days.
All right. When are you gonna start having kids? Give us a time frame.
Yeah.
I'd say
Put you
2
on the
years.
spot.
2
Sweet.
years have some
As it pertains to the fire service or just in general?
in general.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
'Cause I'm telling you, it's $1 million idea.
it is,
I
but
know it. I smell it.
so
Now somebody else is gonna make it.
it's
Yeah,
a,
maybe.
it's a
But if they
mentorship
do, then
program.
I'm fine with that.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's a mentorship program. Like I firmly believe like you can read a book, it's going to make you smarter. You can
Yeah.
listen to a podcast, it's going to make you smarter, right? But I think like you have to have somebody or something that you can gravitate to that's going to be an example. Like we said, like you get into your teen years, like you're getting into manhood, like it's a process and there has to be coaching involved, right? And there could be some kind of program where there could be active coaching involved, but you have to have like
That's where I envision.
person.
Yeah,
You have
that's
to
what
have
I'm
a
saying. We
mentor.
would have to be teaching those people.
That's what
that are gonna do
this
the
is what
thing.
I envision. So I envision y'all coming up with this program, and it'd be like events, and like it'd be like camping. It'd be like going to a cabin. It'd be funded by TVM, and y'all going and having these
So
conversations with people like me.
I feel like we're gonna have to find someone who's qualified to do that.
So I'll tell you this, and this is a shameless plug. If you don't know what the alert program is, in a lot of ways, that's what that is.
It
that's
is,
true.
it is, but like it's got a wrap.
But that's nothing. That's not
You
the
know what I
prep
mean?
work. Though.
Sure.
That's all post growth for the kid.
Yeah,
You know, that's a finishing program.
It
That's what-
is.
yeah.
Yeah.
In ways, yeah, it is. It's
You're not gonna catch him at 12, right?
no. So you're talking about like a young
yeah,
boys.
I would probably say 18 to 25-year-old time individual.
Well, that's what that is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what alert is. It's
but
I want to catch 12 to 18,
Yeah.
12 to 16. You know.
I hear you. I hear you. I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
'cause I don't want it to be structured like alert. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I think that's what gives a lot of maybe flaw. The alert's a good program, but like I want to like I'm saying like I would value something like if somebody like y'all two took me like to Broken Bow and stayed in the cabin for 5 days and had conversations behind some whiskey talking about stuff like this.
Sure.
And it's an actual program developed,
Yeah.
and that good knowledge is passed on.
Yeah.
You
So-
teach me to shoot, and I'll talk about something about firefighting.
Well, and you can use firefighting along with it, and it might essentially when you develop this, it might be targeted towards firemen.
If it depends on how broad you're trying to go. Like if you wanted to go broad and like develop a program, I think it'd be good. You'd have to have people that are pretty dedicated, so it'd have to be vetted individuals, you know, where you could kind of pick the people and
Yeah.
and I mean it wouldn't have to be too vetted, I guess. You just pick some sound dudes that like you know, exemplify the traits of a man.
There's no certification behind it.
Right. No, and that's not the goal, right?
Well, nobody having kids is certified to have kids.
Exactly.
And this is-
Exactly. That's what I'm
everybody have
saying.
to be having access
And
to it.
I've talked with a lot of people in my life, but I've never had this conversation with anybody but y'all. You know, but then there's something that out of my mind. You know how my mind is. I get to work, and then I think like it goes beyond that, and like y'all are meant for it, and that's the reason why I'd like to see y'all put something together. Hell, I like to maybe even write a book. I don't know. Seriously,
Yeah. Man, that's a hard charge, dude.
Yeah, it is.
just to see where it'd go. I mean, like to see
Yeah.
where it'd go.
I knew I didn't want to come here today.
I don't know. Oh, and now it goes back to falling back on this next topic I want to talk about is leaving your legacy behind.
Yeah.
And that's something I take very, very seriously. So, that's something I've always took seriously because when I was in the Marines, like, I tried really hard and I got some good awards. You know, I got Marine of the Year in 2017 and stuff like that. And
Heck yeah.
my whole goal was to leave a legacy behind, a positive legacy. You know, I didn't want to be Billy the Kid or anything like that, but you know, I wanted to leave a good impact and know everywhere I go, I'll leave a positive influence, and I want that to be my legacy. Mm-hmm. And it can sound selfish, it can, and I don't intend it to.
I don't think so.
And that's kind of the reason why, like, you know, I started this TBM stuff is not only because the clothing brand and what else, but it's like, man, how could I leave back like a positive influence that people remember me?
Yeah.
And it is positive to the whole culture. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I think that's important.
The only true legacy that we leave is in the people we come in contact with.
There it
Yeah.
They're the only thing that's going to carry on in perpetuity as long as humanity is in existence, right? Everything else can be destroyed or scarred beyond recognition, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about the influence that we have on the people around us. And it's all about what they take away and make part of them. And that's not just our kids, which is our focus for this conversation, but it's
Because
all
they
the
are
men
your legacy,
and women that we come in contact with.
Your kids are your legacy.
They're our direct legacy, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why I find it so important, and that's like, how do you, I mean, I guess my question is like, how would you instill the importance of legacy beyond your kids, and how would you kind of focus that in the positive way, which we've been talking about for this whole time. But I think that's another dying entity that's going on right now, is that people are so focused on the now and not the future.
Well, part of that also is an understanding of history, I think.
Yeah.
As we destroy our culture and our understanding of history and the importance of mistakes already made, then that legacy is not being handed down. That culture is actually destroyed. And all you have is your direct descendants above you. You go to Europe and they have cathedrals and, real tangible history they can touch. We're new, and we don't have that. So all we have, to some degree, is the direct lineage down from Revolutionary War time, right? And that's under direct attack right now. And the more that's undermined, the more we are adrift as a nation and a society. So I think making our children understand that. I have the Constitution and Bill of Rights on my walls at the house.
That's a man right
I want
there.
them to grow up seeing that,
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
It's been important to me. And so I think that's part of that, is them understanding not just what I think is to be a man, but the culture that's behind it and what I think I need them to build toward later. Because everything is...
I think all of that is part of, and what we've been alluding to it and kind of hit it a little bit earlier, but is like, how do you instill the importance of legacy with your children? I think for me is I have to help them find foundation in who they are, right? We talk about identity, right? They have to know who they are, right? And more specifically, in my belief, who God says they are, right?
Yeah, sure.
And his belief of who they are. Because I feel like if you don't struggle from this identity crisis, you're not going to be blown in the wind by everything that comes your way, right? Like whether it be the military, right? Your desire was to like leave a positive legacy within the military. And I'm not trying to like scrutinize you and say your identity was in the wrong place.
Oh no, it was. But it still is.
But like where you put your identity in, like, I want to, like, okay, where is the goal rooted? Like, where does the satisfaction coming in from? Do I want people to like me? Do I want people to think that I'm cool? Because we all know, like, biblically, man is always going to let you down, right? We suck as a human race, right?
Yes.
We're fallible, like, and we're always going to be that way, right? And so I think, like, for me personally with my kids, like, we talk about career path and I want my kids to be successful and I want all those things, but more than anything in the world, I want my kids to know Jesus, and I want my kids to know who he is and who he says that they are. We get so caught up in the now of, like, like, if praying's your thing, it's for sure my thing. Like, I found myself constantly as a child, like, okay, God, what do you want me to do with my life? Where do you want me to go? Is firefighting the right career? Like, am I doing the right thing? And at the end of the day, I don't think that God wants us to focus so much on his plans and intentionality, right? Because it sounds funny to say, but if you think about it, if we really believe God is who he says he is and how big he is and how vast he is, that he created everything out of nothing, right? Why would I want to try and wrap my finite brain around his overall plan for the universe, right? It's just not fathomable, right?
Yeah.
But what my responsibility that he's charged me with is to be who he's called me to be. And how do I do that? I read the Bible, right? I learn about Jesus, the man the only perfect servant leader that there was, the best one that there was. How did he live his life? How can I emulate that in my today, in this conversation that we're having right now? How can I be that for other people? And God's going to create a path, right? And so if I can root my kids in that identity, right, then it doesn't matter what they do, right? Because they could be a trash truck driver. They could be the president of the United States. They're going to find joy and purpose in whatever they do, right? And if I can do that, life's a win, right? It doesn't matter. That's where you find your legacy, right? Because then you do everything unto the Lord with joy and satisfaction and peace and knowing who I am. And it doesn't matter. If I break my leg tomorrow, I can never be a firefighter again. I still know who God says I am, right? And I still know I'm a loved child of God and I'm awesome. And he says I'm awesome and he's going to provide for me. I got clothes on my back. I got a roof over my head. I got kids that I love, right? And I'm always going to have those things, and it's never going to change.
Yeah.
No matter what profession no matter what you say of me, no matter what he says of me, I know who I am. You could call me small and retarded, right? And okay, that may be what you think, but I know who I am.
About me.
But yeah, sure, maybe it is, right? And I'm not saying you'd be wrong, but I know who I am, and I'm confident in that, right? And if I can instill that in my children and how they walk and how they carry themselves, right? It doesn't matter, right? They're gonna have the desire to leave a positive legacy, and they will.
Yeah, that's
right?
awesome.
So
What's that verse?
That's
All
crazy.
things work good
Crazy.
through him. I've always understood that to be things are going to be bad, and it's your responsibility to take that and glorify God with it, right? It's not that if you love God, everything's going to be great for you.
right,
It's that things are going to happen that will still glorify God,
sure,
right? And so we have to live life with that understanding of things,
Yeah.
which I think is what you're saying, you know?
yeah.
And it's definitely scripturally.
and if
Yeah,
you're doing the right
accurate.
things, like
Even though, because I mean, this is crazy because this is what my mind goes to. No matter what Jesus went through, like all the bad he went through, he still left a real positive legacy. And I see where you're
because
going
it
with
wasn't ever about him.
that. Yeah.
Right? Like my goal in life is not to like leave a positive legacy for myself, right?
Yeah,
Because
exactly,
I suck, right? And life
Yeah.
is but a vapor. It's here and gone. Like nobody's gonna give a crap who Brad Conrado is in 300 years from now if we live that long. Hopefully not.
True.
But like my positive
Who we do
impact.
it for and what we do.
It's who we do it for, right? Because at the end of the day, glory is to him, right? So like if I can live a life that exemplifies that and I can bring people with me, like boom, I hit the mark, dude.
Yeah, sure.
Right? At the end of the day, everybody wants to hear when they go to heaven, well done, my good and faithful servant, right? That's what the Bible says. And that's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
And how do I do that? I do that by living my life every day, every minute, every moment in the right way. And it's because I know who I am, right? If we don't know who we are, we haven't clearly defined that, right? You cannot change what you cannot clearly define. If I can't define that, then I'm going to spend my entire life looking for that, filling that void space with who the military says I am, who the fire service says I am. Am I a good nozzleman? Am I not a good nozzleman, right? Am I a good husband? Am I not a good husband, right? It's all
true.
It's all gonna hang on the balance, right? We talk about marriage, right? I put my identity in my wife, she leaves me. Now what? Okay, now it's on to the next thing, right? It's never that.
You get lost.
Yeah, if I've got a solid marriage with my wife because I put my identity in Christ and I serve her, right? That's the image. Anyways.
Yeah. I
Not
see
to
what you mean by that. 'cause
not
you
to
get
preach at
lost.
you.
Yeah.
Excellent answer. Wish
It
I'd
is.
have had
I
that
mean,
answer.
You can't top that.
That's good. I would like to say though, there's a big old plaque out there talking about the impact that you had on your men over there.
Oh, yeah.
So
Dude.
don't
Sell
cut-
yourself short.
Yeah,
bro.
don't do that. 'Cause you know, there's guys out there telling stories. Hey man, I knew this guy. You know, let me tell you this awesome story thing we did. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, it's out there. They think I'm crazy too. Funny story. That I'm telling you, they think I'm crazy because was sitting on post, was in some fucked off fob in Afghanistan, and I was literally praying. They heard me praying for like the Taliban to come overrun us and stuff like that. So we all die in combat. 'Cause that's just where I wanted to go.
Oh gosh.
And my
bro.
Rizzoni comment broke. 'Cause I know you're listening to this, but like, bro, he was scared. Like legitimately, like,
call it down on him.
yeah.
Please don't listen. Please don't.
Yeah, you had 30
You're
guys over
scared.
there playing. Don't listen to Gunner, please.
He's crazy, I promise. You know him.
But
He's falling out of fellowship.
no, but guys, is there anything else y'all want to talk about?
Oh man, we've talked about a lot of stuff.
We did. It was a good one.
I think we checked all the boxes.
I think we checked all of them and then some.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, guys, this is TBM episode 4. Like us and follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to us. We'll be on Spotify and Apple. And with the apparel coming out, it is coming. It's a slow process. Didn't understand how slow it was, but it's coming. And I'll let you know on a further date when it's going to be released. But guys, thank you for watching.